Hello, glad to see you on my channel. I really value it. And today I want to share with you a wonderful story. It's a dramatic story that will come as a total shock to everybody. It is a really amazing story. So enjoy watching it.
The parents stood dumbfounded when they saw the boy, a carbon copy of their twins, at the train station. A 6-year-old boy stood in the middle of the station square. He was scared, looking around, and didn't know where to go. "Are you lost?" A strange woman in a brightly colored outfit approached him. Yes, tears were about to roll from his eyes, but he held them back. "Come with me." She held out her hand to him. The boy gave her his hand, and they walked through the crowd. At one point, he was frightened, broke free, and ran. "Where are you going?" The gypsy woman shouted after him, but he ran without looking back. The boy saw that the doors of the wagon were open and ran in. This very wagon was not attached to anything. It had just been standing there for many years. The boy walked along the doors, went into one of the compartments, sat down on the seat. It was warm and there was no one there. "Mom," he looked out the window, but there was no one there on the tracks. When it got dark, he was hungry. His stomach was rumbling. But he realized that if he left here, he would be picked up and taken away. And he didn't want that, because his mom would come back and he wouldn't be here. How would she find him then? He cried. Now that he was alone, he could do it. After that, he didn't notice how he fell asleep. "Hey, is there someone here?" He heard male voices in the night and opened his eyes. He was scared. "Come in, there's no one here," said another voice. Presently, 2 men climbed into the same wagon where the boy had been. They started rustling something, swearing. The boy heard it all. He looked like a mouse. "Come on, let's have a proper sit down," said one. "What don't you like here?" The other one answered him. Narrow opened the compartment door of the one who wanted to sit down. He dragged some kind of sack in, and then he himself fell into the cramped space. Oh, they heard a child's cry. "Who?" The man started to look around, but it was dark. Now, flicked a second lighter. "How are you doing?" They saw the kid. "Mom left it." He crawled out from under the table. "How did you leave it? Permanently or temporarily?" The men were stunned to find a small child here. "She'll be back," the boy said pitifully. "What's your name?" One of his buddies leaned over to his face. Alex, who was smearing a tear down his cheeks. "Don't cry, Alex. Everything will be fine. Your mom will come." The other one ruffled his hair. They, not paying attention to the boy, sat down and began to put everything in the bag. And there was a lot of stuff, mostly jewelry. They had just come back from a job that had gone well today, and now they were dividing up the loot. "Anthony, why did you give yourself so much money?" One of them started to get indignant. "Don't yell, I'll be right there." They were flicking the lighter back and forth to get a glimpse. "Are you hungry?" asked the one called Anthony at the boy. "Yes," he nodded. Alex's eyes were so big when he saw it all. The man took bread and lard out of another bag, broke it off, gave it to the boy. "Thank you," the man said. Together they spent the whole night here. When it started to get light, Anthony and his friend just left. "Come on, Pariah, don't be sour. Mom will definitely come today." They told him goodbye and left him a gingerbread. Alex looked out the window again. He was waiting for her to appear. But Mom was not there. It made him so sad that tears ran down his face again. Now when it was light, he saw that there were blankets on top. They were all dusty and torn, but Alex didn't care. He was freezing. Slowly he pulled one out. Pulling it up, the others fell in after him. The boy wrapped himself up, put it on the shelf and waited. In the evening he tried to go to sleep quickly, not to think and not to be afraid. And in the morning they found him. No, not his mother, but the station workers. They were looking for the 2 men who had shared the loot last night. They saw that the carriage was unlocked. They decided to check, and there was the boy. "Who are you? Where are your parents?" A policeman asks him here at the station. "I'm Alex," Mom's gone somewhere. I'm lost." He wanted to cry again. "Where did she go?" the man asked the small child. "I don't know. I couldn't help but cry." "Okay, I see. We need to call custody." He got up from his chair. The station master walked into the office. Word had reached him that a little boy was lost. He saw him and smiled. "Were you with your mom?" He leaned over and asked him. "Yes," nodded the man. "I've never seen her leave a child like that," the man said in a half voice. "Do you know his parents?" "Where did she go?" the man asked the small child. "I don't know. I couldn't help but cry." "Okay, I see. We need to call custody." He got up from his chair. The station master walked into the office. Word had reached him that a little boy was lost. He saw him and smiled. "Were you with your mom?" He leaned over and asked him. "Yes," nodded the man. "I've never seen her leave a child like that," the man said in a half voice. "Do you know his parents?" "Yeah, and I'll call them right now." He pulled his phone out of his pocket. Alex heard all this and couldn't believe that his mom would come for him again and they would be happy. He sat down on the chair and looked at the door to see when it would open. Not an hour later, a woman burst into the office. Her eyes were frightened. She looked at the boy, and Alex sat and thought that she should leave as soon as possible because she was blocking his view. Katie and Selena met and saw each other for the first time at school when their parents brought them there. The girls immediately sat at the same desk. "My name is Selena," she turned to her desk mate. "And I'm Katie," the first grader told her back then. "Shall we be friends?" They both laughed. Yeah, Katie was okay with that. From that moment on, the girls were inseparable. They were always and everywhere together. They went to school, did their homework, and played outside. Their parents were happy that Selena and Katie had formed such a close bond. "It's good if they carry that friendship through life," said Sarah, Selena's mother. "Yes, they are like sisters," Olga Ivanovna, Katie's mother, agreed with her. The girls really thought they were sisters. If something happened at school, they stood up for each other. One didn't learn, the other gave advice. They did everything together. "Come to my place tonight," Katie told Selena. "What are we gonna do there?" They were already in 5th grade. "I don't know, we'll play something." Katie started to remember what toys she had. "Okay, just for a little while, or it's a lot of assignments," Selena agreed with her. So they met every night, one or the other. Everything was fine with the girls. They did not think about any guys or discos. They were still young, so they had only toys on their minds. "What do you want to be when you grow up?" asked Katie to her friend. "I haven't decided yet. I guess I'll be a teacher," she said. "And what are you?" "And I want to become a doctor," the girl answered with such a serious look. "Oh, they say you have to study to be a doctor for a long time," Selena said smartly. "It's okay. I'll help people later," Katie was sure of it. Time moved on. Now that the girls were not so young that they could go anywhere, their mothers decided to send them on vacation. They found out what vouchers were available, and for the summer the girls went to one big and famous camp in the south. They had a good time there and came back happy and tanned. "How did you like it?" their parents asked them. "Of course, if there are vouchers for next year, make sure we get one." The girls knew they wouldn't be bored. As the new school year began, Selena and Katie were still just as inseparable. "Will you come over to visit tonight?" After school, Katie asked. "I don't know today. It's back to school tomorrow," her friend told her. "Come, I'll show you something," Katie told her conspiratorially. "What?" Selena even got curious. "When you come, I'll show you." Her friend didn't bother to tell her everything. Selena came home. She couldn't even imagine what Katie wanted to show her. Everything she had in the house she had seen a long time ago. Then the girl remembered that Katie kept talking about some kind of basement. She said that when they moved, her parents had shoved everything she had into that basement. Maybe she had gone to that very basement, and now she wanted to show it to Selena. She quickly did her homework, left her mom a note saying she had gone to Katie's, and went outside. Her friend didn't live too far away, so within 10 minutes, Selena was at her place. Well, what's there? Intrigued, and you can't tell. She couldn't wait to find out what Katie had found and wanted to show her. Come on in, I'll show you, smiled her friend. Selena went into the room where her grandmother offered her tea. The girl agreed because she knew that the woman made very tasty scones. While the grandmother went to the kitchen, Katie called the girl into a small room. They sat down at the table, and her friend took out an iron case. What's that? Selene didn't understand. I'll tell you a story, you won't believe it, she told her. My parents and I decided to dismantle our basement because there was a lot of junk taking up space. I asked to go with them, and we went. Just starting to tell Katie, as at that moment Grandma came in and put 2 cups of tea and a whole plate of scones on the table for her. Thank you, they answered her with glee. Eat to your heart's content. Grandma left the room and closed the door behind her. So when we were in there, I saw my old toys, dolls, railroad, and all that stuff. But I wasn't interested in it anymore, so we put it all in boxes and took it out to the yard. But there was still a lot of stuff in the basement, and when we went down there the second time, Dad said we should throw out the old dresser. Mom and I started pulling out the drawers to make it easier, and in one of the drawers I saw this box. I was so curious, I picked it up. But I couldn't open it for a long time, Katie continued to say. And what? You never looked into it? Selene wondered. She couldn't believe it. Of course I looked in, but I didn't do anything. I left it to show you. She spoke as if it was someone's remains. Well, come on, open up. The girlfriend couldn't wait. Wait, that's not the whole story, stopped my friend Katie, as I was trying to open this box. My mom came up to me and asked me what I was doing in there. I showed her. She smiled, came over, wanted to help me open it. She did it. It was really quick. Turns out it was just a matter of flipping some hardware off. Kathy told her all this. It was so mysterious and interesting. Selena couldn't wait to open the mysterious suitcase. Kathy looked at her friend, took hold of the iron bars and pulled them open. Selena saw several syringes, vials, and other medicines inside. What's that? She looked at her friend. It wasn't very intriguing. Come on, look at these syringes. She pulled one out of the box. It was glass. Well, yes, glass syringes. That's interesting. Took one and considered it. Selene. My mom told me that this box belonged to my grandmother. The girl got up, opened the doors, and called out to the woman. When Veronica entered the room, she immediately noticed the iron briefcase that had once belonged to her. Grandmother, please tell us why it belonged to you and what you did with it, asked her granddaughter. Oh, girls, it's a long and sad story, Grandma told them. We're not asking you to tell the whole story, just tell us what you did with it. I was a nurse then, and that case really helped a lot of people. Now you have disposable syringes. You buy them at the pharmacy, give them a shot, and throw them away. In the past, there were glass syringes, reusable. With one syringe, I went through the whole war. My grandmother was sitting and remembering what it was like then. There's Selena. There's a reason I wanted to be a doctor. Turns out my grandmother was one, and I'm following in her footsteps, Katie told her friend right away. Yes, she agreed. They sat for a long time looking at everything in the box. Other than syringes, there was nothing of interest. Let's play doctor, Katie suggested. Come on, and which one of us is going to be the doctor? Selena realized that, but asked anyway. Let's take turns, first me and then you, the girlfriend suggested. It was more fun that way. Kathy put on a white headscarf, went into the hall, sat down on the sofa, and waited for her patients to come in. Selena came into the room, holding a plush toy. Katie expertly placed the toy on a diaper, then examined it, drew some liquid from an ampoule into a glass syringe, and injected it into the toy. The tissue immediately turned a dark color. Here, this is where it hurts, the newly minted doctor said. What to do? looked at her friend who had brought her a patient. "We need to do surgery," Katie said. She took the blade and cut where the cloth had darkened and pulled out the dirty absorbent cotton that was soiled from the product in the syringe. "That's it. I'm a doctor now," Selena told her. Then Kathy brought a similarly plush patient to see her, and all the manipulations were repeated. After all that, the animals were sewn up. So they changed several times, until Katie said she had no more plush toys to ruin. It was Selena's turn, so she pouted her lips and said that Katie had participated 4 times in this game, and she had only participated 3. "Okay, I'll find something." Katie went to her room. Then she brought out a doll that had a rubber head. "How am I going to do her surgery if she's plastic?" the girl wondered. "So the head is rubber," Katie told her. Selena took the blade, held it to her head, and started to make the cut. But not a few seconds later, the blade slipped, and the whole thing went into Selena's arm. She screamed, but at that moment, her grandmother left the house. "Katie, what do I do? Help me," screamed her friend. Katie took the real first aid kit they had at home, pulled out some sterile bandages, and put them on her friend's wound before they treated it all with green tea and iodine. She started winding the bandage. She didn't spare it at all. It took the whole skein on her arm. Selene was in a lot of pain because when they pulled the blade out, they had opened the wound a little. She didn't know how she was going to go home or what to say to her mother. But from that time on, she realized that Katie was a born medic. She really needs to go where she wants to go. That day at home, Selena was scolded by her mother as well as Katie for doing such a thing without adult supervision. What if it hadn't been a hand, but something else, or cut elsewhere, and so on, the parents said. All this time, the girls were friends, socialized, had many different adventures. And finally, the graduation, the end of all classes. Everyone was excited and prepared for this day. "What are you going to wear?" asked Selena to Katie. "I don't know. Soon we'll go with my parents to buy something. Hopefully we'll choose something. And you?" "And my mom bought me such a beautiful chiffon dress. I'll probably wear it." Selena said. "Come on, when?" Katie wondered. She began to remember the last time they had met. It had been in March, and her friend hadn't told her anything then. "Just recently, maybe a month ago. Now when I was leaving, he said he was coming to visit." Selena remembered Mickey. She felt sad. "Wow, girlfriend, we'll be at the wedding soon," laughed Katie. "Wait to talk about the wedding. You need to study a little," laughed that one. There was the whole summer ahead of us, where we could walk around and do the rest of our own things. At the end of July, Selena's young man arrived. "Mickey, hi," she greeted him. "How I missed you," he hugged the girl. "Come quickly, I'll introduce you to your friend." Couldn't bear to do it, Selene. They came in behind Kathy, sitting in her yard. "I knew you didn't pick bad people," Mickey said of Kathy. "Of course, how can I do that, since I only ever have the best people around me," she giggled. In the evening, Mickey had to leave, and his girlfriends went to see him off. "When will you come next time?" the girl asked him. "I'll probably already wait for you. September is only a month away. It's very hard for me to get out," the young man replied. There in town, he helped his father, moonlighting for him. "Okay then. See you later." She kissed him on the cheek. Mickey climbed into the electric train and sped off into the distance. "Man, Selena, he's so handsome," her friend told her. "Are you jealous or what?" Selena even hesitated. "No way, what jealousy, just happy for my friend." Katie took a little offense. "Come on, let's go home." She took her hand, and they walked down the sidewalk. The month went by very quickly, and the girls were away at school again. Mickey asked Selena to move in with him, but she refused. She was comfortable in the dormitory. Maybe it was fear of the young man's parents or something else that was stopping her. "What if you and I got married?" Mickey said. "Well, when we get married, then we'll see." She wasn't going to do anything yet, no big moves. On New Year's Eve, The girl wanted to go home. She knew Kathy would come too. But Mickey said that Katie should come to their place and Selena should stay here. Selena didn't know whether to agree to that or not, but when she called her friend, she talked her into it, just as she had talked Mickey into it. The guy's house was packed with all the company, and his parents were there too. And after the chimes, he put a box in front of Selena. "What is it?" She looked at him with frightened eyes. "Selena, marry me," he told her with a huff. "Mickey, I knew you would do that. But it's still early. We're only in our second year. There's still so much studying to do. Why rush?" She couldn't understand. "So what would your answer be?" He seemed to miss everything she had just said. "Of course I agree, but I think it's very early." She stood up to him. "Oh, kids, I congratulate you." Mom got up from her seat and hugged them both. Katie was happy for her friend too. Selena still insisted on having the wedding in the summer when school was over. Mickey agreed to wait. And so, the next session was over. Selena came back to her place. Kathy was waiting for her at the entrance. "So, friend, when's the wedding?" she asked. "In 3 weeks, as if you didn't know." "Yeah, of course I know. It's just good to see you." They hugged. After that, the hassle began, which was very enjoyable for both girls. Dress, veil, shoes, everything was there. But then the argument began over where the wedding event would be held. Mickey insisted that everything was in his city because he had friends and acquaintances there, and not only him, but also his parents. Selena, on the other hand, said that she wanted to do it in her town, where all her family and friends were. Eventually, the young man relented. Selena was glad that he did. Waiting for the wedding and preparing for it lasted so long, and the wedding itself flew by in an instant. No one even noticed what it was. "I hope we'll live in that town," her husband asked her after the wedding. "Of course we study there," she laughed. "Should we get an apartment or go to your parents' house?" Of course, if money allowed, could rent an apartment. Selena was afraid to talk about it because she thought the guy would think she was mercantile. "First we'll live at my place, and then we'll find an apartment," he concluded. Good, Selena agreed. She had more worries now. Not only did she have to go to school, but she had to do everything at home to please her mother-in-law. At some points, the girl just wanted to lie down and lie down. She was getting very tired. "You're lying down again?" Her mother-in-law told her, even though Selena had just laid down after scrubbing the entire apartment. In general, the woman had a nose for it. As soon as her daughter-in-law sat down or dozed off, she was right there. That's it, I'm getting up," the girl reluctantly said, got up, and went to do her business. After the 3rd year, there was an internship. Selena decided to do it in the same city where she and her husband lived, although it was easier to get a job in her hometown. But as Mickey had said, that was the way to do it. "Aren't you coming over?" Katie called her. "Probably not. I'll do everything here." Selena regretted it too, but there was nothing left to do. "Then I'll visit you for another day," Katie said firmly. "Okay, we'll be waiting." The girls said goodbye. Life went on as usual. All the practices and sessions were over. Selena had to go to work. She was a graduate. Katie had 1 more year to go. "Can I go to my mom's house and meet Kathy there?" "That Kathy, some flighty, bad influence on you," Mickey said and wrinkled his forehead. "Please," she begged him. "Okay," he agreed. They never rented an apartment. They still lived with her husband's parents. It couldn't help but get on her nerves. When her mother-in-law realized that they were staying here for a long time, she began to torment Selena. "Hi, it's been so long since I've seen you." Katie pulled her friend close to her. "And don't tell me, you know how tired I am." Selena took a seat on the bench. "Husband," my friend guessed. And he too. They were sitting right there at the train station talking. "Okay, let's go. You can tell me about it later." Katie stood up and pulled Selena with her. The conversation didn't stop on the way. There was so much news that they couldn't wait to share. They both laughed as they visited Selena's parents first, and then went to Katie's house. "Selena, you just don't look surprised," Katie warned her. "You and your secrets again. You've been like this all your life." The girls used to it. They entered the apartment where Katie's parents were waiting. A young man greeted them on the doorstep. "Hello," he greeted the guest gullibly. "I'm Carlo." "Celine," she stood looking at him. "Yes, that's my fiancé. I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. I was afraid of jinxing it." Katie bloomed with happiness. "You motherfucker." My friend knew this was to be expected of her. They all made their way to the kitchen. There was talk of the wedding. Now Selena was going to help her friend in this endeavor. He'd stayed in this city a few days longer than she promised her husband. "Why?" Mickey asked into the phone. "Katie's wedding is coming up. We need to help." She knew he'd start making up different versions again. "Or did you get a boyfriend over there?" Mickey was very jealous. "What are you talking about? If you want, you can come yourself. Extra hands will not hurt," she'd offered him. "You know I'm working." He didn't listen to his wife's excuses anymore, hung up the phone. "Well, my friend was standing next to me. As usual, nothing new." The girl didn't want to talk about it. "Okay, don't feel bad. He's not going to kill you," Katie hugged her. After that, there was no time to think about Mickey, and everything spun and spun. The wedding day was set and the young people were ready. "I'll go home, talk Mickey into it, and we'll come over," Selena promised at the train station. "Okay, we'll wait to see how I am without a witness." They hugged again. Selena was walking up to the house. She wasn't expecting what was going to happen next. "She's here," her mother shouted from the hallway as she opened the door for her daughter-in-law. "Did you have a good time?" Mickey's out of the room. "And I told you there's a reason she goes there every time," her mother coaxed. "Come on, first of all, my parents are there. Second of all, my best friend's getting married." Selena didn't even get to take her shoes off. "And third, Loverboy, mother-in-law never left their side." "Mickey, I didn't expect that from you." She finally took off her shoes and went into the room. "If you go to the wedding, divorce right away," her husband told her. Then the divorce. She wasn't going to ditch Katie. "There, see how quickly you agreed. And you said you had no one there." He jumped up from the couch. "I don't have anyone there." Celine was already so sick of it all that she wasn't even looking for excuses. "Why don't you call me with you?" the husband continued. Before I could, you swooped in from the doorstep. She turned to him. "Okay, I'll go." He sat back down. "No one minded," Selena smiled. When the husband and wife were getting ready, the mother-in-law was so furious that her son did not listen to her. She talked about how her daughter-in-law had no shame or conscience, but no one paid attention to her words, which made the woman even angrier. "I thought you weren't coming," but Katie was home doing her bridal makeup. If you knew what it was like back home, Selena didn't even want to remember it. "Okay, I came with you." Her girlfriend looked at her through the mirror. At the registry office, everything was fine. Mickey stood by and didn't say a word. But at the restaurant, it started. A young man came up to Selena and asked her to dance. Mickey watched silently as his wife went with him. But as soon as she got to her seat, it started. "Is that him?" the husband asked. "Who?" She turned her head toward him. Then she realized and shook her head negatively. "I see. So, with me you do not dance. And with anyone?" went indignant young man. "Did you invite them?" They'd start fighting. After that, Mickey didn't speak to her all evening. When we got to my mother-in-law's house, he made a scene there too. "You know, Mom didn't know we had anything wrong with our relationship at all," she told him reproachfully. "He knows now," he said with defiance. "Do you often do this?" the woman asked her daughter in the kitchen. "Lately, constantly." Celine didn't want to talk about it. "It's going to get worse from here," Mom said from the height of her experience. "Okay, we'll figure it out somehow," Selena was already thinking about it herself. After all this, they returned home. Selena was offered a position at the school, which she didn't refuse, because it was impossible to stay at home. She and Katie began to call each other more often. In the last year of her studies, her friend worked part-time at the hospital, where she had an internship, and then was going to settle there for a long time. In Selena's family, after she went to work, there were scandals every day, and her skirt is short, and she wears bright makeup. "Do you do all this to make men pay attention to you?" her husband asked her at home. "What are you talking about? A knee-length skirt is not a mini," she showed him. "But it's all tight," he parried. "What should I wear, a burqa?" She covered half her face and left only her eyes. "Yes," he nodded, "or better yet, stay home altogether. And listen to your nonsense." She went into the kitchen, but there was a new ambush. "Why didn't you mop the floors today?" her mother-in-law asked. "What floors? I was at work. I just got here." She wanted to come out of the kitchen. "No, honey, you're not going anywhere until you talk to me." The mother-in-law closed the aisle. "What do you all want from me?" She was so tired, she was ready to go anywhere. "To make you obedient, not as you are now," the woman explained. "What obedient? Am I a dog or a trained monkey?" Selena couldn't help herself. "No one said that, you said it yourself," smiled the mother-in-law. The girl pushed her away and went to the room where she and her husband lived. "That's it, I can't do this anymore." She threw her things into her suitcase. "Where are you going?" Her husband looked surprised. "Away from your family, as if sung together to drive me." She grabbed her bag and headed for the exit. "Don't go." He almost got on his knees. "Stand back, don't grovel." She stepped around him. "Selena," Mickey looked at his mother. "Let her go. She'll come crawling back later," the woman said arrogantly. The girl couldn't stand it anymore. She left the apartment and went to her colleague, whom she had befriended not so long ago. She knew that she wouldn't say no. "Nancy, hi." She said hello to her as she opened the doors. "Come in, what's wrong?" The woman saw Selena come in with a large bag. "Can I stay with you for a while? Then I'll tell you all about it," the guest asked. Sure enough, she took the bag from the girl's hands and carried it into the room. "I'll settle things with work and the divorce now, and then I'll think about what to do," Selena said. "Will you leave the collective?" Nancy asked. "I guess so. I can't be in the same city as Mickey," she said sadly. "It's a pity to lose such a specialist. You are young, but you can do a lot of things." The woman shook her head. They sat in the kitchen for a long time, discussing the situation that had happened at Selena's. After that, they went to bed. Both of them had to go to work in the morning. Nancy asked me when she was ready to leave. She always got to school an hour early to get everything ready. "Yes, I'll be right back. Just a few more minutes," the one said. The two of them came to the school. Selena decided not to procrastinate and to go to the principal at once. She explained everything. She asked her to finish the school year, and then she would let her go. Selena went to the meeting. Nancy said she could stay with her for that time. Mickey was looking for meetings, but Selena wouldn't agree to them. She was afraid of the fact that she would feel sorry for him. She had put a stop to it a long time ago, and she didn't want anything back. "You're so resilient," Nancy told her. "If you lived in that family, you wouldn't be like this," she laughed back. She filed divorce papers, with only a year to go until the end of the year. After that, Selena was thinking of traveling to the city where she was born. Don't forget, they were saying goodbye to Nancy. Of course, she left her address and phone number with her. It was a shame to say goodbye to the staff. They were all so friendly, but it had to be done. Selena drove home. "Daughter, how did you decide to do that?" "On what, exactly? I don't understand." "For everything, divorce, come back." The woman was glad to have her daughter back together with her. "I don't know, but it had to be done at some point." Selena didn't want to bring it up. "Are you going to get a job?" my mother asked. Of course, Celine looked up at her. Not sitting on your neck. Okay. Do you want me to call Sarah? The woman wanted to help her daughter. No, I want to do it myself. I've done it before, she denied it. Good. The mother was glad to have such a mature, sensible, and independent daughter. As she planned, so she did. The very next day, Celine was already sitting in the principal's office. Sarah, I wish I could work at your school, Selena told her. Of course, I'd love to take you, but not now. All the seats are taken so far, the woman regretted. Okay, I'll wait. As soon as something becomes available, call me immediately. She wrote a phone number on a piece of paper. After that, the girl went home. There was nothing to do at all. Katie didn't come for the summer this time. She went straight to work after she got her diploma. Selena was envious that her friend was doing so well, married well, and found a job right away, but she tried not to think about it. 6 months passed. Nobody called from the school. The money Selena had was long gone, and she wondered what to do. Selena, there's a phone call for you. Her mother put her on the phone. Hello, she approached. Selena, hi, it's Harvey, your classmate, remember? A male voice gibbered in the receiver. I remember not parts of it, she grumbled. I found out that you came to our city. I have John, my son. He is going to the 1st grade today, cannot study. Again quickly spoke the young man. Is it that bad? She thought, wow, he was the most inconspicuous kid in his class, and he's got a kid going to school. No, we just want to be safe, he said with a pleading tone in his voice. Good, she thought. Why didn't she think of that before? Not for free, of course, but how much? He continued with his quick story. Oh, I don't even know. Bring as much as you think you need, and I'll find out later and tell you. She thought it was the first time she was doing it. Maybe it wouldn't work out yet. From that date on, children began to enroll with her. Of course, she couldn't take many, but she had a few regulars. And why go out to school when you can earn money at home too? Her mother praised her in the evening. I'm so tired. Selena sat eating soup. From the children? The mother guessed. No, the loneliness, the work, all of it. It's just so monotonous, she sighed. Call Kathy, go visit, see how things are going, the woman advised. Indeed, Selena had forgotten all about her friend because of her work. And she was good. She had only called a couple of times in a year. Maybe she has her own business and problems there since she doesn't call or come over. Selena thought, calling or not calling. No one is going to hit you over the head. Just call, and that's it, the woman insisted. She herself saw that it was time for her daughter to rest. Okay, it's late now, and tomorrow I'll be sure to get a girlfriend. If I'm lucky, I'll get a little vacation. She spoke her thoughts aloud. That was fine. Her mom was glad she'd pointed her in the right direction. Kathy, it's been so long since I've heard from you, she called the next day to a friend. Selena, hello, how many years, how many winters, rejoiced her friend at the call. You know, I wanted to come to your place. What do you think about it? Of course, what are you asking? You and I are like sisters, agreed to Taz's proposal. It's settled then, wait. I'll be there the other day. Selena didn't want to discuss anything over the phone. She knew they would talk about everything when they met. For a few more days, the girl accepted students who went to her. After that, she announced that she was going on vacation and cancelled all classes. She packed her bag. A day later, a train was waiting for her, which would take her to her favorite friend. And I've been waiting, Katie opened the door. Hello, they hugged. While Selena was dealing with her problems with her husband and her job, there were a lot of changes in Katie's life too. She got a job, just like she said her husband loved. He got a good job too. I see you have a full house, Selena said as she walked in and saw how her friends lived. Yeah, Carlo, you know how Carlo is. He does everything for me, not bragging, just saying girlfriend. Yeah, you're lucky to— How was your evening? She asked her husband. You have a great friend, he hugged his wife. I know that. Kathy was glad it was going so well. She went to her room and lay down as well, needing some sleep after a night on duty. It wasn't until Carlo came in for lunch that both girls woke up. Wow, Selena looked at her watch. You can sleep. Carlo laughed at her. It's been a long time since I've gotten this much sleep, she stretched. When the man left, the girlfriends got ready to go for a walk. Your husband said he was going to introduce me to some friend this weekend, Selena told her friend. Probably with Albert, she guessed. How do you know? Did they talk about it? Selena thought it was all Katie's idea. And how could I not know my husband's friends? They are my friends too, she didn't elaborate. Confess your idea, laughed Celine. Why should you sit alone? You'll be in front of the man. He's a very nice guy. Kathy began to praise him. Then why did you split up? Selena wondered. Don't talk to him about it. It's a very bad story. His wife was going out left and right. Almost everyone knew except him. Once, at a corporate party, she was alone. He didn't go with her. And when it was too late, he decided to do a good deed to meet her. He came, and she was right on the street kissing her colleague. After that, they got into the car and drove away. That day, she came home only in the morning. He could not forgive and left. The friend told the story. Wow, there were no children? Celine clarified. No, Katie's gotten sad for some reason. Well, enough about sad things. Come on, show me what you have here and how. The girl translated the topic. All day long they went shopping, did some shopping, and then sat in a cafe. They felt like they had that time back again. When they were still enrolled in this city, it was so heartwarming and fun. So home, Katie got up from her seat. I'm not embarrassing you. For some reason, Selena thought of it just now. What are you saying? You'll get to know Albert. Move in with him. He has his own huge apartment, and there's not enough mistresses there. They walked towards the house. Actually, I came to you for a few days, and you already put me in a man, laughed the girl. We'll get you a job here too. Katie was sure of it. At home, it was the same as yesterday after Carlo came in. Happy talk at the table, and after that bedtime. Saturday came, Carlo as promised, told his wife and Selena to get ready, and he would go to the store and buy everything they needed. Gold, not a man, Celine glared at him. Spit or you'll jinx it, her friend muttered to her. Everything was ready, and they drove off. Carlo had a small house, which they considered their summer house. The view here was fabulous. Selena heard a car making a noise. She turned. It was indeed coming towards them. Here comes Albert. Carlo came out to meet him. Hello everyone. A tall brunette came out of the salon. He took one look at Selena, and she was gone. Come on, I'll introduce you to Katie's friend. Carlo led him to her. Please love and welcome, my friend Albert. He introduced him to the girl. Celine, she blushed. Don't be so embarrassed or I'll start doing it myself, he said cheerfully. Good, she said. All together they entered the courtyard, the men going straight to the brazier while the women busied themselves with the table. So, how did you like him? My friend was curious. Pretty, she didn't mince words. You bet he is. Look at him. What he looks like. That's his personality, Kathy told me. Oh, you think we're gonna make it? Selena wasn't so sure. Albert was really handsome. He was afraid to start a new relationship because he thought he would be treated the same way again as the first time. So, buddy, how'd you like the girl? Carlo was threading meat on a skewer. Yes, she's pretty, cheerful, and modest, he said knowingly. Shall we take it? The comrade joked. We'll see. Albert didn't promise anything. No need to be afraid. Things weren't working out so easily in her life either, Carlo said quietly. I understand, nodded the friend. They were roasting meat that spread its aroma throughout the village. Well, here's to you ladies. Albert raised his glass. And we're rooting for you, the girlfriend said cheerfully. Selene, let's go talk. He offered her his hand. Let's go. She looked at her girlfriend. who winked at her. They went to the swing set, which was right there on the grounds. They were both silent as they walked. "Did you come here?" He saw her sitting on the swing, walk over to swing a little. "Yeah, I hadn't seen Katie in a while, so I thought I'd meet up. Selena liked it here." "How long have you two known each other?" Albert wanted to know everything about her. Since first grade, once they sat at the same desk, they had never parted again. Selena smiled. He had already rocked her enough. "Carlo and I went to school together too," the young man admitted. "You're interesting." Selena didn't know why she said that herself. "We'll meet again. Why'd you go away?" He was curious. "Yeah, I'll be staying at Katie's for a while longer." Selena looked in their direction. "Carlo said you wanted to get a job here," Albert wondered. "They're the ones who want me to stay here." She hadn't had time to think about it yet. "And you?" He stopped the swing. "If only with you." She didn't realize how she'd said those words out loud, just thinking about it. Perhaps the wine was playing tricks on her. Albert froze. He couldn't find anything to answer. He just stood there looking at her. "I'm sorry," she's on her feet. "No, nothing." Still his stupor hasn't passed. Selena went back to her friends. Now she was cursing herself for her language. Maybe Albert would think she was imposing and wouldn't want to talk to her anymore. What happened? Wondered the friends as they saw that the young man had remained standing there by the swing and Celine had come back. "I'm such a fool." Almost crying, the girl said. "Explain normally what happened. Did you have a fight?" Katie couldn't understand. "Nothing happened. Everything is fine." Albert walked over to them and put his hand on Celine's shoulder. She froze and stood like that for a few minutes. Nothing more happened that evening. They talked for a long time. Then Albert and Carlo went to put out the brazier, and Kathy and Selena cleaned up the dirty dishes. "And yet, what did you get out of it?" Her friend looked at Selena. "I'll tell you later," she promised. "We didn't get home until the next morning." Albert said goodbye and promised to call. "Oh, Selena, if this works out," the girlfriend spoke dreamily. The next day, when all her friends were at work, Selena decided to go to the school to find out about vacancies. And to her surprise, they were there. The principal said she could hire her as soon as possible. "Katie, and I got a job," said a happy Selena in the evening. "No kidding," was happy for her friend. "Selena, you," Carlo called her on the phone. It was Albert. They talked for a good half hour. After that, Selena came into the kitchen all red. "What are you, like a cancer?" Katie thought they were fighting again. "He asked me out on a date." Selena was excited. Everything was going around inside. "So that's great news." Katie led her to her room. "Get changed. Stop walking around in jeans and sneakers already." The girl put on the dress her friend gave her, shoes, some makeup on her face. She was ready. So that's how ugly ducklings become beautiful swans. Carlo met them in the hallway. "What are you talking about?" His wife shushed him. "I'm sorry, you were already beautiful and now you're glowing," he complimented Selena. She hailed a cab and drove to the restaurant, where Albert was already waiting for her. When she got there, his expression was about the same as Carlo's. "Wow, that dress looks great on you." He took her hand and walked her to the table. "No need to embarrass me. That, believe me, is enough." She was all red again. "Why are you so embarrassed?" He looked at her, that blush only adding beauty to the girl's appearance. "I don't know," she shrugged. "Okay, let's order." He held out the menu to her. Selena had chosen a light salad and meat for the hot meal. Albert had ordered something for himself and some champagne. "Selena, after we met, I thought you could stay with me. I realized that you live with Carlo and Kathy. They have a family. You may be redundant, but they will never tell you that. I suggest you move in with me. We'll get to know each other, be close for a while, and then we'll decide if we should start something or not," he said in a businesslike tone that made Selena laugh. "I don't even know. No one's ever offered her that before." "Think," He poured champagne into glasses. Okay, I need to consult with Katie, best friend after all. She didn't mince words. Okay, now, let's have a nice evening. He sat across from her and kept looking at her. They danced. Selena could smell his perfume. She didn't know why, but it turned her head. Afterwards, Albert walked her home. Remember what you need to think about, he shouted after her. Good, she turned and sent him an air kiss. He pretended to catch it and tucked it into his breast pocket. Oh, Kathy, I like him so much, but I'm afraid to hurry in case he thinks something, she told her friend back home. What would he think if he offered? She didn't understand. Well, then I agree. You cannot miss this option. And suddenly, in a joint residence, I do not like it too, Selena decided. Look how well everything is going. She found a job, met a man. Now just wait for the wedding. And that's it. Everyone is happy, rejoiced Katie. Selena moved in with Albert. He waited for her, prepared a room. The first day, it was kind of awkward. Selena was embarrassed of him. He must have been embarrassed of her. Going for an interview tomorrow, she told him in the evening. Well done. Break a leg, he rejoiced. To hell with it, she laughed. After that, he suggested watching a movie. Selena didn't mind that. It was good for the two of them, but it was only the first day. In the morning, she went to school. As promised by the principal, she was accepted there. Everything was going well. Not a couple of days later, Selena was in a new team. How was work? Asked every evening Albert. He was very attentive. In a few weeks of living with him, the girl realized it. Very well, as long as I like everything, she replied. We should get together with Carlo and Kathy sometime, the man suggested. I was thinking the same thing. She was no longer blushing in his presence. The couples called each other over the weekend, arranging to meet at the same place where they had been when Albert and Selena met. How are you guys doing? My friend started asking around. Everything's fine. Celine looked at Albert, looking to him for support. Yes, he nodded. You two aren't together yet? Carlo hurried things along. Wait, it's still early. Selena started to feel uneasy. After that question, it was never spoken of again. That evening, Albert spent more time with his friend. They were arguing about something, talking. It was good, because the girlfriends also needed to socialize. Katie, when are you going to make the kids happy? Selena asked. Date, she gestured for her to stop. Why? My friend didn't understand. Just, replied Katie sadly. Carlo doesn't want to. The girl guessed. No, it's more complicated than that. You could see she was having trouble broaching the subject. Okay, you can tell me yourself when you want to. Her friend hugged her. We had to get back. Everyone had things to do in the morning. Selena washed her face, said goodnight to Albert, and went to her room. She made the bed and lay down. A few minutes later, there was a quiet knock on the door. It opened and Albert appeared. May I? He asked. Yeah, come in. What's wrong? She sat up in bed. No, I just want to spend this night with you. He crouched on the edge of the bed. Wow, Selena had expected anything but this. He had brought a blanket with him, in case she minded sleeping under one. Lay down on the other side of the bed. Why today? She didn't know where to start the conversation, or if it was even necessary. I realized you're the one I need. I think you've figured it out by now too. He saw the way she was looking at him. Yes, she said quietly. They lay there like two schoolboys, neither one daring to be the first to do anything. Selena, he moved closer to her. I really like you. And you to me, she felt him hug her. After that, their lips came together in a kiss. It was their first real kiss, which they would remember for a long time. In the morning, Albert got up early to prepare breakfast for his beloved. Usually she did it, but today, he wanted to make her happy. Hey, that smells good. She came out into the kitchen. Good morning here. Thought I'd make breakfast for you. He stood at the stove. Selena walked up to him and hugged him from behind. Thank you, she kissed his back. Aren't you late? He looked at his watch. No, I have another whole hour. She sat down on a chair and watched Albert put scrambled eggs on the plates. After breakfast, she quickly washed her face, got ready, and went to work. Albert did the same. He was so happy today that it could be felt physically. See you tonight, love, he kissed her. Have a good day, she went. Selena couldn't help herself, and already at recess, she called Katie and told her everything that had happened to her last night. Honey, I congratulate you, she told her. Kathy really was happy for her friend. And things were only getting better from there. Albert treated his beloved beautifully, and she reciprocated him. Listen, Selena, I think yours is going to propose to you, Katie said into the phone. What makes you think that? Selena and Albert had been together for a year, but there was never even a hint of it. Yesterday, I heard Carlo talking to him. He thought I was in the bathroom and couldn't hear, my friend explained. And what were they saying there? Selena got worried. Something about a restaurant and a ring. I'm telling you, it's a proposal. Katie couldn't keep it from her friend. Okay, I hear you. Cheeks turning red with joy. Albert was calm until the weekend. They had business as usual. I want to take you out to a restaurant tonight. Carlo and Kathy will be there too, he told her Saturday morning. Okay, I'll be ready, she was calm. She couldn't concentrate on anything at work. Good thing there weren't many classes. She got home early, so there was plenty of time to get ready. Selena tried on all the dresses she had in her closet, but either because of excitement or something else, none of them seemed to fit her. Finally, she chose the one she was going to wear, put it on, arranged her hair, and waited. Albert arrived without delay. The girl got into the car. Let's go. For some reason, Selena began to shake. It was the effect of excitement. Her palms were so cold that it seemed that if she baked something now, she would immediately freeze. How was your day? Albert asked her. Great, she said. You're acting kind of weird. He noticed that she was all clenched up and looking only forward. No, as usual, she tried to speak calmly. Okay. He put his hand on her arm, felt it was icy, but didn't say anything. They pulled up, got out of the car. Carlo and Kathy were already waiting for them. What an event. We might as well have sat at the cottage, Kathy said. Let's go. Not everyone goes to the countryside. We need to have a good rest, Albert called out to everyone. Now it was obvious that he was a little worried himself. The evening went as usual. Everything was already ordered, so the waiter only brought the dishes. At some point, they'd brought champagne. Before that, they had been drinking wine. Friends, I have a confession to make, Albert said. He stood up. In what way? Smiled Carlo. I fell very much in love with this woman, and I wanted her to be my wife, he said and handed Selena the ring. God, Albert, I love you so much. Finally, all excitement gone, she kissed him and put the ring on his finger. Congratulations, Carlo and Kathy said in a voice. Selena drove home happy. She looked at her husband-to-be and couldn't believe that this was even possible. Are you happy? He turned to her. Very much so, she leaned her head on his shoulder. Me too, he petted her. The next day, Selena called her mother, told her everything, and she promised to come. Albert suggested not to make a big celebration, to sign in the registry office and then go to the countryside with friends. Selena was not against it. Mom arrived. Carlo, Katie and a few other people were invited to the wedding. Everyone was happy for the bride and groom, and they looked at each other and were so happy. Well, that's it. Everyone's on board now, Kathy said as she raised a toast. Thank you. Selena walked over and hugged her and Carlo. Yes, friend, I will never forget that. Albert shook hands with his comrade. Life went on. Selena wanted to get pregnant, but it wasn't happening. She went to her friend's house in the evening to talk to her, because she was very close to the subject. You see, Katie, no matter how hard we try, it doesn't work, Selena told her. She spoke again in the quiet voice she'd used before when the subject came up. Will you just tell me? Selena knew that something was going on in the family of friends, but Katie kept quiet about it. Good, she looked straight into her friend's eyes. Well, she waited. When we got married, we were over the moon. This was the family. All that was missing was a baby's cry. But after a year, and then another, and still nothing worked, Katie was silent. Well, not all at once. Selena realized her friend was facing the same problem she was now. I suggested to Carlo that he should undergo a checkup. It was good that he didn't need to go anywhere. He could do it at our hospital, and he agreed. After we went to the doctor, it became known that Carlo would never be able to have children, she cried. Will you calm down? Celine hugged her. I understand and accept it all, but I can't get over it, she said through her tears. You can take an infant. I can't believe you don't have anyone there refusing, Selena suggested. Carlo doesn't want to. He was very upset after that examination too. That's another matter. She realized why her friend was in so much pain. Now you know everything. Kathy couldn't stop crying. Should we go through too? The girl asked her friend. Of course, it's not forbidden to anyone, said the one. That same evening, Selena talked to her husband. He agreed to do it. And a week later, they had all the forms in hand, only to go through the doctors. When everything was done, all that was left was to wait for the results. Are you worried? Albert asked his wife. Briefly, they sat in the hallway outside the doctor's office. When he called out to them, Selena's legs became cotton. She felt like she couldn't walk at all, but her husband was there to help. Yes, indeed, you have some problems, the doctor said and wrote something down. You mean we're not having kids? Selena almost fainted. Why, there is a solution to that problem, the doctor told her. What was it? She was all ears. IVF, he told her in just 3 letters. We agree, while thinking, Selena, said Albert. You need to prepare, read all about it, then take all the tests again and come to the laboratory, said the medic with knowledge. We'll get it done. The husband took his wife's hand and they went home. How can it be, 2 friends, and both of them having such problems, Selena lamented. And what don't you like with what the doctor suggested to us? Even if it won't be the natural way, but still the same, Albert said. Yeah, I agree with you. She's thought about it before. In the evening, Carlo and Katie came to visit them. There were no more secrets on either side. When do you all start? Asked Selena's friend. The sooner the better, she said. Great, and I'll be your personal doctor, Katie smiled. Selena felt like she was jealous. Okay, agreed the girlfriend. What Albert and Selena had to go through. But lo and behold, the procedure had taken place. Now it needed time, whether it would take root or not. How are you feeling? Katie kept calling and asking. It's okay, her friend answered her for the 100th time. Great, no exercise, no intimacy with my husband or anything else, commanded by my personal physician. I obey, laughed Selena into the phone. 2 weeks passed. Selena started to feel her breasts hurting. She called her friend to ask. Honey, I congratulate you. That tells me it worked out, Kathy practically shouted into the phone. Okay, then I'll make an appointment for a checkup, she mumbled. Everything was going well. Kathy counseled every day, and she also took her to her first ultrasound. The woman who conducted it was surprised when 3 other people walked into the office besides her colleague. They were Selena, Carlo, and Albert. All on the ultrasound. She laughed. Yes, Caroline, you've already forgiven us, stepped closer to her Katie. Okay, she rubbed Selena's belly. Congratulations, you have not just one fetus, but a whole. Why did you stop talking? Startled Selene. I don't know, it looks like 2. But what's this? She turned the device a little sideways. So how long? Albert couldn't wait. So far, I say 2, nodded Caroline affirmatively. Great, we were afraid there might be more, Albert smiled. He helped his wife up. Everyone went home in high spirits. We sat there for a while and parted ways. Selena was happy. It was hard for her to go to school, to do her lessons, but she did it. "Would you quit your job already?" her husband asked her. "You what? I like it," she resisted. "Look at the watermelon you're carrying on your back," he laughed, and right afterward, he came over and kissed her belly. She knew he was joking, so she never took offense. When she had to go on maternity leave, she couldn't take it anymore. She spent almost all her time in bed. Albert supported her as best he could. One evening, he got a call from work, saying that he needed to come there urgently. "I won't be long, I promise." He leaned over and kissed his wife. She hadn't been feeling well since this morning. "Please don't go," she held his hand. "I can't." He realized he couldn't leave his wife either, but at the same time, a fixed-term contract. He put on his coat and left the house. He decided that as long as he started the car and stood in traffic, it would be faster to walk. He ran to the road. It was a long way to the crosswalk. He decided he would just cross. He just ran out onto the road. A car came out of nowhere, brakes squealing, darkness. "Selena," I called an ambulance, rushed her to the hospital. Katie came to see her. "What's wrong?" "I feel better now. I have to wait for Albert," perplexed her friend. "Get up, grab what you need, let's go," as if her friend hadn't heard her. Selena obeyed her. She was in charge of her pregnancy after all. She put on the dress. Katie helped with her shoes, and they walked out of the entrance. They were at the hospital in a few minutes. "Look, friend, you just don't worry too much, or it might start early." Katie took her hand. "What happened? Why is everyone running around me?" "It's still early. I'm feeling fine. Just my blood pressure is spiking a bit." Selena looked at the doctors who were here. "Albert." Kathy fell silent. She just couldn't say it out loud. "What's wrong with him?" My heart thumped in my chest. He'd been hit by a car. Carlo had gotten the call an hour ago. Her friend muttered in a trembling voice. "Where is he? How is he feeling?" Selena wanted to get up, but at that moment a strong tingle tugged at her lower abdomen. "Please don't worry. He's in ICU, alive." "But what exactly?" "Will be known later," muttered Katie. But it was too late. Selena had lost consciousness. She was hooked up to all the instruments that were needed. "C-section," shouted Katie already as a doctor. The preparations for the operation had begun, and everyone was fussing. Katie realized that her friend would not be able to give birth easily. She lay there, waking up and then losing consciousness again. "Anesthesia," the command sounded. The anesthesiologist inserted the needle into her back, and Selena, though she was almost unconscious, felt her legs give out. She was laid on the table, an IV in one hand, a machine in the other that took her blood pressure. Katie assisted, and the operation began. Selena couldn't see anything. She was as dizzy as before and sometimes foggy. "What's wrong with my husband?" she whispered with parched lips. "It's going to be okay." Kathy was doing her job. "That's it. You have two wonderful boys," she told her, but her friend was so exhausted from the whole thing that she didn't understand much. Since the babies were premature, they were immediately placed in special boxes. Selena was taken to the intensive care unit to recover a little. "Katie," Selena called out, but no one answered her. A few minutes later, a nurse came over. "What did you want?" She looked at the girl on the bed, who was pale. "Get Katie, where is she?" Selena thought she was shouting, but she was actually speaking very softly. "She'll be here shortly. Check the IV," and the girl left. In the morning, Selena was moved to a regular room. She still couldn't recover from the shock. "Hi, honey." Katie came into the room. "Where have you been?" Selena was already coming to her senses. "Don't worry, everything is fine. Carlo is with Albert." She held her friend's hand. "What's wrong with him?" Tears came out of his eyes. "He's in a coma, but the doctors say he's going to be fine." Katie tried to reassure her. "How did this happen? And where are my children?" Selena turned her head. They weren't in the room. They are in a special room. When you feel better, I'll take you there. Katie spoke quickly. Are they all right? Cried the girl. Yes, they'll be fine, her friend assured her, like a doctor. The next day, Selena got up. She went straight to them. For a long time, she stood looking at her two sons. Billy and Barry, she said aloud. Are you naming names? Katie came up behind me. Yes, look how tiny they are. The newly mommy drove her finger along the glass. Everything will be fine, don't worry. Her friend took her hand and led her somewhere. Where are we going? Selene worried. To Albert's. Don't you want to go? Katie stopped. Do you want him to come to his senses? The wife hoped so. No, but I guess if he hears your voice, he'll feel better, the woman speculated. They got to the floor above, and Selena saw her husband. He was covered in plaster and bandages. She came over and took his hand. Congratulations, you've become a daddy, she cried. He can hear everything, Carlo whispered in his ear. He's been here all this time. Sometimes Katie took over, but she had to work and rest. I know, Selena said through tears. She went back to her room, called her mother, told her about everything, and she came to see her the next day. A few weeks passed. Albert came out of the coma. Kathy said that soon the children could be moved to a normal environment. They had grown up and could now do everything like full-grown children. Albert, his wife, came to see him. I'm sorry I didn't listen to you then. He couldn't make himself intelligible, but she understood him. It's going to be okay, she kissed him. And so, after a long time, Selena, her mom, and two wonderful babies were home. So, we need to get everything ready here. The woman looked at the room the parents had allocated to the children. The crib had been bought, everything else too. Albert had to do it all while his wife was in the hospital. But as it happened, they had to do everything themselves. Selena was very grateful to her mother and friends for helping everyone. One day, she was sleeping and had a dream, and in it, she and her 3 children. Then she wondered why there were 3, because she had given birth to 2. In the morning, Selena told her mom, "It's just a dream," the woman told her. But Selena began to remember that during the surgery, 3 times, it felt like her skin was being stretched. The first time, there was a baby. The second time, there was a baby. But after the third time, there was nothing and no one. That's what she told her mother. "Daughter, Kathy told me you were out of your mind," the woman smiled. "So what? I remember all that." Selene squinted her eyes. "Probably Kathy would have told you about it," Mother suggested. "Katie, her husband, has been diagnosed as infertile," snarked her mother. "And what? You think she took the baby from you?" I realized what my daughter was thinking. "Why not?" Selena was being paranoid. "So, look, it's all in your head. And where do you think he is now?" Mom wanted to reassure her. Hidden away, there was speculation again. "Don't talk nonsense. There's so much to do. Albert will be discharged soon, and he needs care," the mother continued with her chores. "Hi, how are my puffins doing?" "Katie's here to visit them." Selena knew Carlo was in the hospital, and if Katie was here too, where was the baby? She shook her head to make the silly thoughts go away. All together they drove this evening. The boys were so pretty. Albert had been released from the hospital. Carlo had brought him home. He was no longer the cheerful man he'd been before the accident. The base of his skull was fractured, as well as his hip joint. He had to be taught to walk again. "Thank you for not leaving us," Selene hugged her husband. "I'm sorry," they put him on the bed. Now it was as if there was a third child in the house. My mother-in-law and my wife took care of all of them as best they could. The boys were growing up. Albert started to get up slowly, and his wife was always by his side. "Come on, darling, one more step." He walked around the apartment. He tried. He did not want to fall in the mud in front of her. Of course, he got tired quickly, but he did it with all his might. "Selena, bring me the children," he said, and she went straight for the 2 toddlers, who were already crawling around the apartment. Oh, you're so fast. Dad couldn't handle them. Imagine if it had been 3. Celine seated herself at his side. What are you talking about? It's not the first time I've heard it. Get it out of your head and bring up Barry and Billy. He looked at each. You got it all mixed up again, Celine laughed. Okay, I'll remember soon. He was still very weak. Selena, I suggest you take Albert to the surgery. He'll feel better immediately afterwards. He'll be able to walk normally, Kathy called her. That's what they did. The wife arranged with a clinic. The price was reasonable, and Albert was taken. When the boys were almost 1.5 years old, their father walked around the apartment with a cane. Well, tomboys, he stood his ground. Dad, they ran to him. Soon the kindergarten line would be coming up. We'd have to call Mom again, Selena said. I don't mind. Albert loved his mother-in-law. Selena had to go to work, so she called her mother, who was happy to visit her daughter and son-in-law. It was not a burden for her to take care of her grandchildren. Have you noticed that Carlo and Katie have been coming over less often? Selena asked her husband. Here we go again. Calm down already. We would have found out a long time ago if it was as you say. Albert was losing his temper. I don't know, but I'm sure of what I'm saying. Selena stepped away from him. She watched the mother settle the children and grimaced. She dreamed about having 3 children very often, and after that she woke up in tears. But she never told anyone about it again. Everyone just laughed at her. Were you sick again? Albert kissed her. No, it's okay, she replied to his kiss. The boys went to kindergarten. They liked to run and play there. When they were 3, their grandmother went to her place. After that, they were taken there on long weekends. I'm going to go to work, Albert told his wife one day. Are you sure you can do it? He's walking now, but he's still limping a little. Yeah, he was ready to go into battle. Okay, just please be careful, his wife told him. He left, and she walked him to his car. Selena was working now too, and her sons were big, so she had no trouble getting them in and out of the garden. They dressed on their own and then spent the whole trip telling their mom all about what they'd been fed and what they'd done. Life took a new turn. At home, the special bed Albert used to sleep on was removed. The cribs were also moved to the closet, and now there was a beautiful bunk bed for the boys. Wondering if there were 3 of them, where the third would sleep, Celine stood looking at the rearrangement of the room. Stop fantasizing, her husband, who heard her thinking out loud, told her. Trust me, it's not a fantasy. A mother always feels. She turned to him. Why don't you talk to Kathy directly? You've been friends for so many years. He told her then. What if it really is my fantasies and the man takes offense? Selena thought to herself. They were less likely to go to the dacha with their friends now, either because they didn't have the time or the opportunity. But today, they just wanted to rest, especially since tomorrow was a day off. Katie, hi, Selena called her girlfriend. And good luck to you, she replied with humor. Now I got a call from the railroad station master saying my son was there. She quit as she told me. I don't understand anything. Call your mother, shouted Albert. Selena dialed a number, but her cell phone was out of range and no one answered her home phone. Lord, really? Come quickly, she hurried her husband. They got into the car and drove to the train station. While Albert was parking and getting out of the car, Selena had already run into the building. She was shown the door. She opened it and froze in place. A few minutes later, her husband came in after her. He too was amazed. Hello, brought them out of their stupor by the policeman. I need to talk to you, Selena told him. She looked at her husband, who was still staring at the boy. Okay, let's go outside. He showed her where to go. You understand, this is my son, but not mine. I mean, I didn't raise him. She began to ramble, not knowing how to explain everything to this man. What are you talking nonsense? You decided to get rid of the child, so have the strength to admit it. He did not believe her. Did you call custody? She asked. Yeah, He saw his partner call the authorities. They'll be here now, and we'll ask him ourselves. Selena breathed out. She was pounding so hard, she couldn't do anything. Hey, Albert came up to the guy. Hello, Alex looked at this unfamiliar uncle, but he wasn't scared. Albert couldn't believe his eyes. In front of him sat a boy who was a carbon copy of his twins. What's your name? He asked. Alex, the guy answered quickly and simply. Alex, Albert repeated after him. When the guardianship came, they couldn't understand a thing. Selena told them some stories about childbirth and skin tension and everything else. Woman, have you been drinking? The oldest asked her sternly. No, I'm telling you, she puffed up her lungs again. Wait, Albert came over. Look, he pulled a picture of the children out of his wallet. Then they couldn't understand anything. So is this your child or not? They asked again. Yes, I gave birth to him, but I didn't raise him, Celine said for the 100th time. Nothing is clear, we're taking the boy. When you've made up your mind, come and see us. She handed her her card. Let's go to Kathy's, Selena commanded her husband. A few minutes later, they were already at her friend's apartment. Selena couldn't calm down. She was still feverish. What's the matter with you? She opened the door for them. How many children have I given birth to? Finally, this question did not come as a shock to either her or her husband. What are you talking about? Her friend didn't understand. Just answer the question. How many children have I given birth to? Name a number. Selena thrust at her. Let's go to the room, she called them. Albert realized that the conversation would not be short. Speak up already, or I won't vouch for myself, Celine glared. Stop yelling already. Yes, you gave birth to 3. But how could you know that? Cried Katie. How, you're still asking? Did you sell it to someone? Yelled her friend. Crazy, I would never do that. She got up and went to get water. She took it for herself and hid it somewhere. That's Selena's second theory. What's wrong with you? I'll tell you all about it now. She took a few sips and poured Celine a drink. I don't want to. I'm listening to you. She pushed the glass away. When the labor started, you were very bad. I ordered a C-section, but you remember that yourself. One baby was big, he was fine. The second one was a little smaller, but also normal. But the third one had a triple entanglement. He was almost dead. I didn't even show it to you. Can you imagine what would have happened to you? Your husband had an accident. He was in intensive care, and the baby was dead. Katie was crying the whole time. And where did you put it? Throw it away. Selena spoke in a different voice. No, I gave him to the nurse who was there to take him to the doctor unnoticed. She said that the kid was not alive. One lung had not developed, and he would not live till morning. That's what happened. The same nurse came to me and told me the baby was dead. I asked her to bury him. All I did was keep the secret for so many years. I didn't think it would come out. Katie hugged her friend. Forgive me, and I've thought all sorts of nasty things about you over the years. Selena felt guilty. So how did you find out about the baby? Kathy couldn't understand it. Then Selena and Albert told her everything. Jesus, did he survive? Her friend clutched at her heart. It turns out so. Albert quickly walked over and gave her some water. Let's go. The woman got to her feet. She couldn't drive herself, so they got into Albert's car. Kathy told him the address. It was outside of town. And who lives there? Selena looked out the window to where they were going. That same nurse. She's been out of work for 3 years now. She was old, retired. It didn't go to my head. They drove up to the old house, which was already leaning to one side, got out, knocked on the window. There was no answer, as it was dark outside. No light could be seen inside. Who are you here to see? Grandpa came out of the other half. To Grandma Lucy's, Katie said. She's gone, dead since spring. He wiped his eyes. Who did she live with? The woman asked then. With me. You could hear he was having a hard time. How? She pointed to the house. Just like that. with us in one half and her daughter's no-nonsense daughter in the other, he invited everyone to come in. "What's your name?" Katie asked him. "Archie." He led them to the table. "Did you and Grandma Lucy have a small child?" Katie asked the question cautiously. "Alex, was it?" He answered promptly. "Yes, Alex," jumped up from her seat Selena. "Oh, such a story." He got up and walked over to the stove. "Tell me about it," Albert asked him. "Betty worked in a maternity hospital. Some woman gave birth there. They gave her a baby, said she wouldn't live till morning. So she came up with an idea to keep her daughter at home, to bring the baby, and told the doctor that he was dead. And the doctor told her to bury him, so she brought him in and he smoked. But he was premature and sickly. Did the doctor really say he wasn't alive?" Katie didn't understand. "You know what grandfather Ugraph is like. He will raise a dead man from the grave." The old man clenched his fist. "I see. Cue it ourselves." Katie looked at Selena. "Betty brought it to Julia, but she refused. It wasn't mine. And that's all. They told everyone then that the daughter had fattened it. She was such a girl. She could stay away from home for months, and we took her for fostering. But we didn't keep her safe." And he cried for real. "What's wrong?" Albert came up to him. "I left the house for the woods, and Klavka took the boy and took him somewhere. The neighbors told me. I saw her later in the evening, silent as water in her mouth. He was still wiping his tears. Don't worry, we found your Alex." They started to leave the house. "So where is he?" The old man held out his hands to them. "As soon as we're done, we'll be there." The man turned to him. At home, everyone was sitting around the table. Now Carlo joined them. "What to think? We have to go to the guardianship and get the boy." Albert was the first to speak. "It's not negotiated at all, but according to the documents, he has a mother," the comrade said. "But Alex has it written all over his face. We even have a witness, he remembered his grandfather. I think the doctor who did the exam will say everything too. Won't keep quiet." Katie was sure of it. In the morning, Carlo drew up a statement to the court. The others came to the guardianship office. Alex was so happy about the guests, and it didn't matter that they had only known each other for a few hours. "Alex, are you coming to live with us?" Selena asked him. "Where's my mom?" He looked her in the eye. "I'm your mom, and that aunt just stole you from me a few years ago." She tried not to cry. "I don't know." He stepped away from Selena and walked over to Albert. "And you're my dad?" "Yeah." He couldn't sit down, so he just leaned into it. "I like you, but what if the real one comes?" He still couldn't believe what this auntie said. "I am the real me. Look." She showed him a portrait of Billy and Barry. "Who's that?" He was so stunned that the picture fell out of his hands. "These are your brothers, and I'm their mom." She hugged him. Claudia was stripped of her parental rights. The doctor and Katie were removed from their positions. Alexander was reinstated on all documents. He was now Selena and Albert's son. "Mom, can you bring the boys yourself?" Her daughter called her. "Of course, and what happened?" She began to find out. "I'll explain it to you later on the spot," at which point all the courts were just pulling. Grandma entered the apartment with the boys, and all three of them froze in place. "Well, who's the crazy one here?" She looked at her mother. "Daughter," the mother began gulping air with her mouth. Mom quickly gave her some drops. When everyone had calmed down, the boys went to meet their brother, and Celine kept telling them what had happened. "How could you? You could feel it," the woman lamented. "Mother's heart can't be deceived." She hugged her mom. "Yes, I thought that such things are only invented in TV shows and movies, but here it is. It happened to us." You could see that my grandmother is still in shock. "Let's go," Celine called out to everyone. "Where to now?" her mother asked her. "Someone I'll introduce you to." Selena smiled enigmatically. They arrived in that very village to Archie's grandfather. He was sitting on the stoop smoking. "So, meet your grandfather's grandchildren." Selena got out of the car. "I think I had one." He got back on his feet. and now free, the woman laughed, and one by one, Barry, Billy, and Alex began to get out of the car. Whoa, what's mine? He stood there confused. All three of them, no turning away now, still she smiled. After they had visited the village, Selena dialed her friend's number. You're not mad at me? Selena asked that question first. What's it got to do with you if it's your fault? I'll meet you at the cottage. She wanted her friendship and this party back. Of course, I thought you were the one holding a grudge against me. That's why you didn't call. Selena thought her friend cried. You what? They both laughed. That same evening, everyone was at the gathering. It seemed like everything was the same as before, only the children were now 3 instead of 2. And where did you put the third one? Her husband reminded her of a question he'd asked her before. On the couch. She looked at everyone confidently now, not like when everyone took her for a fool. It had been decided that the children would not go to school. Alex was far behind, and Selena wanted to get him up to speed in a year. Barry and Billy were happy about that too, and Albert realized that he and immediately said the right things. It was too early for the boys to sit at desks. When not 2, but 3 identical boys were brought to the kindergarten, the teacher grabbed her head. Albert and Selena stood aside and watched their children. They were so happy, even though they had been through so much together. In the window of a passing train, she saw her husband and daughter. The truth was monstrous. There was a dim light in the old fortune teller's house. It was rumored in the village that the fortune teller had long ago turned 100 years old, but she still did not leave her craft. If the rumors about the centenary were true, the grandmother did not look her age at all. Her eyes were full of life. Her fingers nimbly lit candles and laid out cards. She looked intently at the photograph the night visitor held out to her. It showed a happy family, mom, dad, and daughter. They're alive. Alive. Heh heh heh, smiled Grandma after a long silence. I can see they're alive. And so are you, granddaughter. You're wrong, Selena shrieked. I buried them a year ago. I came here to have you confirmed, yes, dead, drowned, lost, so that I could live again. We'll at least try to try. And you're a charlatan, that's what you are. Alive is alive, Grandma said with a smile. It's a terrible sin to bury the living. You'll never be able to wash it off, my dear. Her throat tightened with indignation. Her anger seemed to choke her with its fingers. Her shoulders shook with sobs. For a whole year, she could find neither truth nor peace. At that moment, she even raised her hand so that the woman wanted to hit the old woman. But the fortune teller did not kick out the angry guest, but put her hand on Celine's shoulder. In this village, they say I'm 100 years old, she whispered. They lie, of course. All people lie. When Grandma Juliana first came here, decades ago, she was already old. In just a few weeks, she had a nice house made of huge logs, a bathhouse for her body, and a small altar for her soul. And then a string of people came here. Some are looking for relatives, others for missing objects, and others for themselves. I'm sorry, Celine whispered, removing the old woman's hand. When they were gone, my whole life turned upside down. I feel like I'm in a bad dream all the time, and I can't open my eyes. Don't apologize, granddaughter, Julienne replied. I've seen it all. I've seen war, and pestilence, and famine. I've seen parents bury their children. Do you have a gift? The ability to see? The guest asked. She wanted so much to hope that the old woman was right, but deep down she doubted the truth of her words. She wanted to know more. No gift, the witch doctor exhaled. The late-night conversation was beginning to wear her down. You see bodies, and I see corporeal ones beneath them. They shuttle between us, swarming, not like flies, but like birds, or like clouds. Are they spirits? Ghosts? Whispered Celine in horror. You say spirits? The grandmother replied. I say helpers. What makes you think they're alive? They've been searching for them. Not for 3 days, not for a week, but for a month. I looked for them myself, personally. I looked everywhere. I looked at everything, my God, everything. It was so scary. And you just looked at the photo and you saw it. How is that possible? The grandmother sighed. She was beginning to lose patience, which is rare at her age. How do you explain to a blind person what the sun looks like? You can describe the shape, color, warmth, but it would still be a pale shadow of what the sun really looks like. As soon as she looked at the photo, she saw the whole picture. Deception, betrayal, and true love. I'm not 100 years old, granddaughter, yawned the fortune teller. I'm not 100, no. Please help me, Selena whispered. Help me, I'll owe you for the rest of my life. How would it quite help, eh? Grandmother Juliana suddenly laughed in a hoarse voice, and her laughter made the guest feel frightened. She was reminded of the old women who used to scare naughty children. They invite you into their house, but there is no way out. Selena jumped up and rushed to the door. The sudden movement extinguished the candles, and the room was plunged into darkness. The guest ran through the old woman's house, fumbled for the entrance to the corridor, and it was a long line. She kept running, fumbling with her hands on the walls in search of a handle. But no, only the endless surface, the relief of the huge timbers of which the walls are made. Suddenly a candle was lit in the distance, like a lone star in the sky. The guest obediently returned to her grandmother, her table, and the maps. How long are you going to run around? The fortune teller asked sternly. You'll scare away all my helpers. Don't think you're the only one who's scared. The helpers can sense things too. And worry, you're scaring them, granddaughter, scaring them. It's not good. Selena's hands went cold. It seemed to her that she would never get out of this terrible house, where she had come of her own free will. She would wander in the dark, looking for a way out, or maybe Juliana's grandmother had other plans for her. The old woman kept smiling, and the sight of it sent chills down her spine. I'm sorry, the guest whispered. I apologize for calling you a quack. You're not like that, no. You're the real thing, the real thing. A witch? The fortune teller said, and then she moved as sharply as if she'd flown across the table. Selena could have sworn that the old woman's face moved toward her separately from her body. Even so, the guest replied defiantly, I don't care who I go to anymore. I just want to know the truth, and I don't need anything else. So I'm telling you the truth, Julianne sighed. Your husband and your daughter are alive. But the truth, you won't like the truth. The truth will disappoint you, granddaughter. The fog was suddenly gone. Selena looked at her phone, 2 o'clock in the morning. In front of her is a tired grandmother who was old before she even came to this village. And her, Selena, with her eternal skepticism. If she wasn't ready to believe the fortune teller, why did she come? Why had she waited her turn in the gazebo for days? She certainly didn't have an answer to those questions. You shouldn't have buried them, Julianne said. I shouldn't have. It's a great sin, granddaughter. How do you know? Selena wondered. I didn't say that. I see that the coffins are standing, and the wreaths and lamps have been lit, the fortune teller explained. But the coffins are empty, and the earth does not accept them. Selena thought her grandmother had a rare gift indeed. That spring, when she had received the death certificates and organized the funeral for her husband and daughter, the ground was really frozen and couldn't be dug up. The ceremony was strange and long. She had never been to the cemetery since then because she didn't believe in it. What am I to do? She pondered, wiping away her tears. If I leave everything as it is, I'll be tormented. And if I start looking, will I be disappointed? Better disappointed than agonized, Julianne smiled, the demonic light glinting in the corners of her eyes again. Because the truth is very interesting. Where do I look for them, grandmother? Selene asked, wiping away her tears. I'll tell you all about it, nodded the old woman. To the guest's surprise, all the old woman's teeth were in place. Go to the station. And as Celine listened to the woman, the hairs on her head stood up. Every expensive hotel has its own fragrance, which should evoke the most pleasant associations with the place. A clock that shows the time in different time zones is a must. This way, the value of the place is immediately increased. And also fresh apples or candy at the reception desk to make the guest feel at home. The hotel, where a handsome man and a little girl entered, had all the trappings of hospitality. "Good afternoon," he said with a slight accent. "We booked a room. I'm not sure I filled in all the fields on the website correctly." "Oh, that American language. What's your name?" the girl at the counter asked helpfully. "Nicholas," the man replied with a smile. "Nicholas Crass. I am traveling with my daughter." "Let me see. Yes, Mr. Nicholas, the registration is valid. Welcome to our hotel. Are you Austrian?" the hotel employee asked with interest. "Oh no, not at all." Nicholas waved his hand. "We're ethnic Americans. We live in the Czech Republic now. I have a small business there." "What brings one to the US?" the woman wondered. "Oh, unfinished business," the stranger explained. "You know, life is so interesting you have to keep looking back. It's useful. Only then you realize that time has passed, and if you don't look back, it will have been wasted." The woman stood with her mouth open. The guest literally charmed her. Such a caring and intelligent man, traveling all alone with a little girl. She looked to be about 6 years old at most. She wanted so much to talk to the stranger some more, to have a cup of coffee or better, a glass of wine. It was as if he read her thoughts, moved as close as the counter allowed, and said confidentially, "Maria usually falls asleep around 10 o'clock at night. Knock on my door twice, I'll come out and we'll take a walk. Maybe show me your hotel, or your soul. You have such deep eyes, I can tell you're a wonderful person." The hotel employee blushed. It seemed she had never been complimented in her life, especially such nice men. Such, but ethnically American, with his own little business. Maybe there would be a job for her, too. On the one hand, she adored New York, her hometown. On the other hand, she wanted to see the world, or at least Europe. "You know," the girl whispered, "my name is Barbara. Just Barbara to my friends." He only smiled in response. It seemed that the guest was doing it out of politeness, but it turned out to be very warmly European. But his eyes, they had the same dark color as the winter forest that came up close to the hotel on one side, and just as cold. As if he had nothing to do with her warm laughter. She felt like she should say something, but she couldn't find the words. "Here's the card," Barbara said. "Your room, with a crib. Just as you ordered. You're on the 3rd floor, Mr. Nicholas." "Thank you very much," he replied in a deep, clear voice. "It's so nice to be back in the motherland. I adore the United States. Nowhere else in the world are there such charming women, and such hard workers." In the commotion, she had completely forgotten to ask Nicholas for his passport. The rules were strict now. The data a guest gave during electronic registration had to be checked and immediately forwarded to the police. But for some reason, she couldn't bring herself to call the man. She'd better go to him at 9 o'clock at night and remind him about the documents. Nicholas was already walking away, holding the hand of his little daughter. They had only one small suitcase on wheels. Barbara almost decided to call the man under some plausible pretext. But then several guests came to the counter, a whole group of travelers. They were back in their hometown. He ordered dinner directly to the room and didn't want to go outside. As the girl fell asleep, there was a knock at the door. He was not mistaken. The porter with the beautiful name of Barbara could not resist his charms. "I've been waiting for you," he said in a voice that made her want to throw herself into his arms. "All my life?" Barbara asked hopefully. "Yes," Nicholas whispered and kissed her gently on the cheek. "The best acquaintances are always casual. You won't have a problem spending some time with me, will you?" "No," the girl smiled. "I've already changed. I can do whatever I want." I'm glad I met you too, Nicholas. Please, Barbara, asked the American Setch. Let's use the first name. I feel like I've known you all my life. Had she known how this encounter would end, she wouldn't have hesitated to rush back behind the counter. This is crazy. Real crazy, Selena thought as she stood on the platform. Along with the pre-dawn mist, the magic had dissolved, and the inconsolable widow suddenly realized what foolishness she had wasted a whole week of her life on, along with the crumbs of her last money. First, she had taken a bus to Washington, and then spent 24 hours on a train. Then she hitchhiked to the village where Grandma Juliana lived, the legendary Grandma Juliana. After 2 days of waiting, the old woman finally deigned to receive her deep into the night. By this time, Celine's back ached, because for 2 days in a row, she had to sleep in the gazebo on some ridiculous tourist mat. There was not just a line for Julienne, but a pilgrimage. You're lucky, the young man who had set up a tent on the property told her. I've been waiting for 2 weeks, and I may have to spend another month here. What are you waiting for? Asked Celine. I want to learn, the boy replied. I have a gift. Do you want me to tell you about you? Your name is Selena, you're from New York. Well, let's just say I told you that yesterday. Good, nodded the pilgrim. You came here to find the killer, but we both know that the real killer is you. The strange guy who discovered the gift of clairvoyance stayed in the tent, and the inconsolable widow had the strangest night of her life. These events now seemed like a dream. Could something like this really happen? Deep down, Selena knew she had to get her head on straight. That since she had suffered such grief, she had to move on. There were still no options. I must live, the woman said, to live for myself and for the memory of them. But is that possible now? The most surprising thing is that Selena, who has been interested in magic and esotericism all her life, had never even heard of Grandma Juliana. But she clung to her as her last hope to make sense of the misfortune that had befallen her family. During the reception, it had indeed seemed to her that the old woman possessed fantastic powers. But now, in the selenium of the day, everything that had happened was doubtful. At the psychic's behest, she must go to the place where the whole story had spun from, to her hometown, where Selena had met the love of her life, experienced the joy of motherhood, and then the grief of loss. Although it had been over a year since she lost Maria and Michael, the wounds in her soul were taking their time to heal. Who knew that an ordinary vacation trip to Chicago would turn into such a terrible tragedy? It was all Michael's fault. He couldn't sit still in one place. He was in some kind of permanent movement, always ready to go somewhere, to do something and create. Why didn't I go with them? The woman questioned. Why didn't I go missing too? Selena couldn't make sense of her feelings and couldn't figure out whether she missed her husband or her daughter more. Probably both. In the days of her misfortune, she dropped everything and flew to Chicago. She traveled to every hospital, cemetery and morgue, visited dozens of offices. It seems that for the month that she spent by the sea, not even once did not even sleep a wink. All in vain. Michael and Maria had vanished into thin air. Why should she go back to New York? Only recently Selena had fled from this city on the Neva in shame and despair. In her heart she realized Michael was gone and so was Maria. Along with them, her quiet life and sleep and rest flew away. The search required a lot of money. She had to mortgage the apartment. This sum was spent on private detectives, lawyers, clairvoyance, all in vain. She couldn't show herself to her parents either. Her mother still blamed her for letting her granddaughter go on vacation alone with her father. Who knew you could disappear without a trace in Chicago? But there was one thing that did give her hope. After all, neither husband nor daughter's bodies were ever found, which means they might have survived, so there's still a chance. The car Michael had rented before he died had its front windows open. He must have fought to the last man, Celine thought. What a man! If they had left the car, they might have survived. After the incident, she was horrified to learn that such stories of cars being swept out to sea were not uncommon. She just never thought something like this could happen to her family. Until the last moment, she believed in the best. At the provincial train station, she saw the same guy who had spent so many days in a tent waiting for an audience. Selena turned away, but he had already spotted her and started waving. He ran up, despite his weighty backpack. "Hello," he said. "What, are you coming back?" "Yes," Selena nodded. "I'd like to be alone." "Can you imagine what my grandmother said?" The boy continued, ignoring her words. "She says I don't have any powers." "You quack. Probably just afraid of competition." "What did she tell you?" "It's nothing," Celine replied and waved her hand. She still hoped that Michael had simply lost his memory and that Maria was too young to tell her anything about herself, and that they would meet again. Her mind told her to just accept the loss and move on with her life. She was still young. She could still have a new family, children. But the pain of loss seemed unbearable. Almost all the way to DC, she was entertained by this strange guy, talking about how he'd felt different since he was a kid, that people didn't understand him and were afraid of him, that he could read minds and see the future through his hands and eyes. Selena even agreed to let him read her fortune, for that he had to sit on the side, and a few stations before Washington. "A vision," he said suddenly, and the guy's eyes really did turn glassy. "Seeing your world changing. How what you think is true becomes a dream. An officer with gold epaulets comes out of a glass door and takes you prisoner." Selena laughed, so amused by this performance. Her grandmother had been right. The traveling companion had no powers. "What's his name, by the way?" Waking up, the boy pretended to be very confused. He gathered his things, threw a huge backpack on his shoulders, and jumped out of the train. Selena smiled even wider. It wasn't until she got off at the train station in Washington, D.C., that she suddenly realized why this young psychic had decided to run away. And the realization of the truth made her want to cry. For the fourth day in a row, Barbara flew with happiness. She'd never left the walls of her home hotel. Why should she go home when she had a family of her own, almost her own? After all, in her 30s, she was not even married. Even a serious relationship seemed fantastic to her. Maybe it had something to do with her temperament. Barbara did not know how to demand or even ask, but could only hint. Maybe her loneliness was due to her work. 12-hour shifts completely deprived her of strength. And of course, one could always meet an interesting man for a one-night stand in a hotel. At first, she thought it was something shameful, but then she accepted it. After all, a fleeting relationship is better than no relationship at all. Still, her soul was still dreaming, if not of a prince, then at least of an interesting man who would take her away. "It's impossible to have a relationship in this city," Barbara complained to her friends. "Everyone is married, a drug addict, a gambler, or a cheapskate. I don't know which is worse." They just shrugged their shoulders. Everyone she had studied with years ago at the hospitality college had husbands and children. And some even had second-circle families. And only Barbara had had no luck on the love front, with only setbacks and defeats. Now that was about to change. Nicholas turned out to be a terrific man, intelligent, caring, well-read. It's as if he came from another reality. His daughter was incredibly well-mannered and polite. She dressed herself, washed her own clothes, and generally behaved much older than her 6 years. On the second day, Barbara replaced her new family's room, taking advantage of her opportunities. Nicholas was now living in an apartment with 2 rooms for the same money, and in one of them, they could spend the night together without the risk of embarrassing the girl. Barbara had to leave the room at 6 in the morning so that no one would notice them together. The hotel used to have its own security service, but the coronavirus and the tourism crisis that followed had forced the management to cut costs. Barbara knew the cameras on the floor were just for show, so she wasn't afraid of being exposed. Harry, a hotel owner in historic New York City, upon learning of the affair, would describe her behavior this way. "This is inconsistent with the high standards of our institution. It is unacceptable to engage with customers. On the other hand, if the guest made the first move, you should have politely declined or quit the hotel." Barbara could hear her boss's voice in her head. Luckily, Harry was visiting his brainchild less and less often and was busy with other projects. The other employees, if they noticed Varia's unusual activity, didn't pay much attention. And who would judge her? Sophia, her replacement, who, because of the frenzied pace of work, also had a troubled personal life. Or the cooks and bartenders, who were changing at an unbelievable rate. The main question on Barbara's mind was how long this fairy tale would last. Would Nicholas take her with him to the Czech Republic? Or would he buy an apartment here, move in, and the three of them would live together like a real family? When she had a day off, she decided to give Nicholas and his daughter a tour of New York. She took them through the streets of the city. They saw the Statue of Liberty. "Here, it's the Statue of Liberty," she said. Then she showed them her favorite places, not the parade routes that tourists often take. Her favorite canteen, where she could taste wonderful food without paying a lot of money. "I wanted to show him the room I rented with my girlfriend, but I was afraid. What if he liked it better?" Nicholas was gorgeous, and she fell in love like she'd never fallen in love before. But his eyes, there was a sadness in them, a tragedy, and every day Barbara was closer to finding it. The girl sometimes withdrew into herself, and when she called to her, there were tears in the children's eyes. Nicholas, when Barbara had once casually said something about Mary's mother, had gotten all tense and asked to change the subject. It was obvious that the charming Czech didn't have a wife. At least not now. Of course, Barbara would have liked to know the truth, but curiosity wasn't that strong. If it's a family secret, if it's not customary to talk about it, let it be. Someday they'll tell it themselves. The young woman was more interested in another matter. Sooner or later Nicholas would finish his business in the United States, and then what? It was necessary to hint that she might be useful in Europe. She was learning German and French. She could take care of the girl while he was at work. But having this conversation and getting over herself seemed unrealistic. How could she get over herself? How to transcend this natural modesty that almost broke her life? In the evening, when Nicholas had put the girl to bed, he went outside to see her. The two of them walked to the coffee shop next door and got themselves drinks. How long had it been since Barbara had been home? Or was her home now not where she thought it was at all? The conversation, the sweet compliments, and little caresses went on for a very long time. "I think Maria has already fully accepted me," stretched out Barbara, blushing. "Where to?" wondered Nicholas. "To the family." "To your family?" the girl whispered and closed her eyes in embarrassment. "Oh, you're so good," the man said, hugged her tightly and kissed her. Of course she did. She's had such a hard time dealing with the loss. Please never, ever remind her about her mother. It's a sore subject with us. Forbidden. During the next walk, he bought her a beautiful and expensive scarf. She had never worn anything like it, of course, but she put it on immediately to please the man. Nicholas gave her a charming smile. "Barbara," he said, "I have a proposition for you. It may sound strange, but listen to the end of it." The young woman brightened. She knew that Europeans were quick to make decisions, but was she really that quick? No, she would not take his last name. She would keep her own, but their future children. "I'm all ears," whispered the young woman. "Barbara, just listen to the end, okay?" Nicholas continued. "Maria and I are in trouble, and we're going to do something that's going to get us out of this cycle of bad luck. You have to, As the man recounted his plan, his new pastor felt more and more like the heroine of a spy movie. A real thriller. The request for help caused Barbara some apprehension, and she even thought of refusing at first. However, if he would really take her with him to Europe, it could be a risk. An interrogator sounds proud. Much better than a district inspector or an internal duty officer. Despite the proud title, Austin hated his current job. All day long, he spent his days circling New York City, conducting pointless interviews with people, and making equally useless rulings. He was in his 30s, captain stars falling on his shoulders, but there was no promotion. It was his own fault. He himself had chosen the dusty job of interrogation, which was dominated by meaningless and useless labor. A man died in the street. His heart stopped. He had to check if a crime had been committed. Even if he was already 90 years old, even if he was a regular at the cardiologist, a man chokes at home in front of witnesses, and the expert confirms it. Do me a favor, interview everyone involved, including neighbors. Even if the medical examiner swears there are 2 cases a week in his neighborhood. A woman with a broken nose went to the hospital, quickly run to her home, question her about whether she suffers from domestic violence. Checks, rulings, orders, and it would be fine if the duties of the inquirer would end there. But no. At least once a week, he had to be on duty at some event or concert, to keep order while the rest of us rested. He wistfully remembered the coronavirus when there was no crime or public events. At least once a week, stand in convoy in court. An interrogator had no life, just a job. The only thing that could cheer Austin up at all was an interesting case. He'd had a few of those in his career, but not very often. Usually he felt that some trivial assignment was in danger of turning into something worthwhile. But even then, alas, there were limits. As soon as you come up with an interesting crime, the material will be immediately taken away from you, either by the investigation or by the prosecutor's office. They need it more. Austin, the boss, walked into the office without knocking. Drop everything, there's an urgent errand to run. Austin adjusted his glasses, a gesture he used deliberately to keep from saying too much. If he did, his bonus would be forfeited, and his meager salary would become a pittance. There was no work in the inquest except urgent work. The ruling he was typing now should have been issued 3 days ago. And the answer still had to be coordinated with the head of the line department. That's right, Austin replied. I'll just print out the ruling, or the prosecutor's office will send us another happy letter. What have you got there? The supervisor asked, peering unceremoniously into the monitor. Oh yes, the accident. Your accident can wait, Austin. Look where the assignment came from. Right there. The colonel proudly pointed to the envelope and the document, the 3-letter abbreviation, which the police preferred not to say aloud, inspired respect. But if this assignment was sent down to their level, it means that there can't be anything alive there. It was just another response and a useless check. All right, Austin nodded. I'll send the resolution later. But, Comrade Colonel, if anything happens, I'll blame you. If there are any problems with the ruling. No more bickering, said the chief. You see what kind of cases I'm assigning you. Not just anything, but insurance fraud. Do you have any idea what that is? Austin adjusted his glasses again. For some reason, the colonel considered everyone below him in rank and position to be feeble-minded. The trouble was that Austin really liked his profession, except that he wanted to investigate more than accidental deaths and age-related deaths, where everything was clear. Insurance? The interrogator interjected. There's even a separate article in our code for this. Well done. I never doubted you, said the colonel. Pay attention. Secret. That's how much I trust you. Don't show anyone either the assignment itself or what you dig up. Sign here in the journal. Your deadline is 3 days. When the chief left the office, Austin decided to finish writing the resolution. He printed it out and took it to the clerk's office. Here in the department, any documents had to be transmitted only through trained people. Then he returned to the order. I read the dry text. In principle, the task could be accomplished not only in a day, but in 5 minutes, without leaving the office. But how do they write? Dry, bureaucratic language. Austin read aloud the fragment that was the worst perceived. As a result of the investigation of illegal activities of insurance companies, the senior investigator of the investigation department found. So, investigation. The interests of the widow of Nicholas Mertz are represented by a lawyer with an expired license. The beneficiary must be thoroughly interviewed, and it must be ascertained that his application was valid. In fact, all he has to do is make a report of the interrogation of one single person. And since the investigator assigned it to the district inquiry, there's really nothing to catch. The woman must have been searched for, but either not found or she refused to go somewhere and explain anything. But what language, motherfucker? Who is a beneficiary? The inquirer thought. Someone who gains a benefit. Then why not write widow? Austin knew the answer to that question very well. Whoever had drafted the document wanted to appear very clever, so that the executor would have to type a new word into Google to find out its meaning. The whole query was full of just such turns that could be simplified. This is the trademark style of those who want to appear smarter than they really are. What happened to her husband? The inquirer said aloud. He found a ruling in the database. There was a whole investigative team working on it. It turns out that the arrogant Nicholas Mertz, ignoring the warning of the storm, went with his daughter to some tourist site in Chicago. Both were washed out to sea. What a drama! The coroner imagined he was the one assigned to investigate such a case. In a separate file, Austin typed the surnames, first names, and patronymics of all the people involved and entered them into a table. It appeared that Selena had been left all alone after the tragic accident. She used to be registered in their neighborhood, but now, according to the real estate database, the woman had gotten rid of the apartment. She must have changed her cell phone, and she certainly wouldn't want to talk to some interrogator and spill her guts about how she'd hired a lawyer with an expired license. Nicholas Mertz was a strange man too. Shortly before his marriage, he had changed his last name for something. He used to be Kearns. Paradoxically, neither the first nor the second name in the databases had nothing at all. No cell phone, no driver's license, no employment records, no medical records. It was as if he didn't even exist. Very interesting, Austin said aloud and continued his search. So, this Mertz was born in Berlin, but under the third name Ivanov. This was evident from the information about his parents. They must have served in the Soviet army and been sent to Germany. The lucky ones. Who would now remember that Soviet soldiers had left the center of Europe a little over 30 years ago? This same Nicholas must have somehow managed to stay in Germany. Maybe his mother was an ethnic German. There were no answers, but the story fascinated him. Anyway, he found his death in the United States. Austin was already preparing to write a report that it was impossible to establish Selena Litkina's whereabouts. She had been evicted from her apartment. Her neighbors did not know her new phone number. She had no relatives in the USA. But as soon as he dialed the phone, there were long beeps in the receiver. And when a woman's voice answered, Austin was even a little confused. The train was already approaching the Washington station when suddenly, where had her wallet disappeared to? She was sure to take it out and put the ticket in there. Robbed, Selena shouted, wiping away her tears. They took the last of the money. She was consoled by the conductor and a fellow traveler, giving her advice. In the purse that the psychic had stolen, there were credit cards already useless, discount cards, and $300 was the rest of her finances. What's she gonna do now? Good thing she'd stashed one bill. Nothing is nothing, the conductor said, putting her hand on the girl's shoulder. We'll get off at once and write a statement. We'll find this bastard. We'll find him, that's for sure. I've already buried my family. The girl wailed. "And now this. There is no justice on earth." After getting off the train, the woman actually walked towards the police room. But something made her freeze. Standing on the platform of the station, Selena realized with horror that madness was coming to her. How else to explain that in the window of the train, which was about to move, she saw Maria. The girl stood with her face pressed against the glass, looking at something on the platform. If it was a ghost, it was a very strange one. Because Maria was much older than the girl she remembered. Selena sobbed, covering her eyes with her hand. Now she would see her daughter everywhere. She would go completely insane, and she would never be able to go back to normal. She should never have gone to that fortune teller. Madness is contagious. Once you touch it, you'll come back again and again. The old woman must have behaved in such a way that she would come back again and again to spend the night in the gazebo, lying on the mat. The woman looked up. The vision had only worsened. Now Michael was standing beside Maria, also looking at the platform. This ghost had changed a little too, a different hair color. When they lived together, her husband asked her to call him Peter in the European manner, which amused Selena. They loved each other so much. She wanted to push the fog away from her, but it wouldn't go away. Tears filled her eyes. The horn sounded and the train started, picking up speed. Maria and Michael's ghosts were leaving for New York on the Sapsan. Selena changed her mind about going to the police station, and since she had almost no money left, she had to buy the cheapest ticket on a regular train. The one that takes forever to move and stops wherever it goes. That solved another problem though. She'd arrive early in the morning and could walk around all day before returning to her parents' house. Call. Interrogator Austin, line division, said a man's voice. Am I speaking to Selena Litkin? Yes, the woman replied. My purse was stolen, but I didn't report it. The conductor must have told you. You stole a wallet? The interviewer was surprised. Then go to the nearest police station immediately. I can take care of it myself. Selena cut her off. What are you calling about? You see, said the policeman, I have an important errand to run, and I need to question you. Are you ever in New York? Yes, Selena answered, trying to speak calmly. I actually live there. The thing is that in the database the apartment is registered to another person, the interrogator said. That's why I thought you had moved. It's not the only apartment, Selena said. So what did you want? She liked the policeman's voice, so deep and raspy. It could only belong to a very brave man. Could you visit me today? He asked. I'll be there until 8 o'clock this evening, but I can stay longer than that. Let's do it tomorrow, Selena suggested. First thing in the morning. Dictate an address. For some reason, her mood improved. The woman wanted to meet this interrogator with a beautiful voice, to go somewhere with him. Probably, if such a man were around, she would never have had her phone stolen in her life. Washington was still herself, a gloomy, bustling, and unfriendly city. There was no room for love, tenderness, or romance, if it weren't for death. Their relationship had long since reached an impasse, a dead end from which there was no escape, no return. She knew it, but there was nothing she could do about it. Selena kept putting off a serious conversation, and then it was too late. Michael was gone, though her heart refused to accept it and kept insisting that he was alive. Nicholas was secretly proud of himself. His ability to improvise always allowed him to solve the most difficult problems. And now, going to New York from the Czech Republic, he only in general terms imagined how to take the money. His own money, by the way, earned in a relatively honest way. But as he got closer to his goal, the plan became clearer and clearer. Man has no path, there is only a goal, he told himself. Alas, there was no one to share his criminal achievements with. All hope on the charming Maria, who was growing up next to him. Yes, he would definitely be able to teach her his craft. For that, she would have to learn and understand a lot. He'd like her to be involved in operations where there's little risk. Otherwise, she'd get addicted to adrenaline like he did, and then she wouldn't be able to do without it. Yesterday he was Peter, and before that Archie, and before that Victor. But the last time, faking his own death was harder. Yes, he wanted to leave Selena. He was sick and tired of her. But what about Maria? It wasn't the girl's fault. He wanted to take his daughter with him. The plan was complex, daring and risky, and so it worked. For the whole world, they were dead. Of course, he should have done it earlier when Maria was 2. He was getting too many questions about her mom. The girl at first refused to believe that Celine had betrayed them, but in time, he convinced the child. Besides, the girl liked traveling, flying on the plane, and she didn't have to strain herself to get into character. Nicholas noticed that with a child, documents are not checked as carefully as if he was traveling alone. Now the final push and the big score was in their pocket. Sometimes it happens that fate itself puts signs in your path. You just have to look at them and take them for yourself. And yesterday, as soon as he saw a pretty woman, tactfully called a girl, at the reception desk, he realized that it was fate. She looked too much like her. Did he love Selena? Initially, he needed her for another scam that would only be conquered by a family man. Then he made the mistake of getting too deep into the role. But everything went even better than desired. Not only pulled off the case, but also became a happy father. So fate sent him Barbara like it did Selena. A beautiful, intelligent, gentle girl. Also shy and modest. The kind that fell in love with him especially quickly. We'll have to use it, Nicholas thought. And then, well then what? Throw it away, trample it, erase it from my memory. Austin had a great memory for faces. If he saw a person once, he could easily find him in a crowd. The main thing was to remember when and for what purpose the person was needed. The inquirer liked to go to work on foot, all the more so because the department was not far from the room that had become his temporary shelter 5 years ago, and then became permanent. Walking not only saved some of his modest salary, one could enjoy the sights of New York. This beautiful and gloomy city was one of his greatest affections. Today's story was still on his mind. What a villainous fate, so ruthlessly dealt with a handsome man and a girl. Walking home past the seafront, in front of the popular hotel with the poetic name North Wind, Austin saw an idyllic picture. At a table sat, as it seemed to him, a couple in love. Except, where had he seen the man's face? The interrogator stopped to get a better look at the family. He had to cross the road. I have so much to do. Austin thought, I have to run this stupid errand, and then I have to do the inspections over and over again. But he crossed the road anyway. Coffee cost a fortune in a place like this, but cigarettes were the same price as in the store. The pack of his favorite brand was running out, so he decided to do something useful, both to buy cigarettes and to satisfy his curiosity. But when Austin approached, he saw something amazing and couldn't believe his eyes, and he was glad he wasn't wearing a police uniform. I'll get her out, the interrogator thought, pulling out his cell phone. Luckily, it was the cell phone he'd used to call Selena. The call went off. Trying not to give away his excitement, Austin stared at the woman beside the man he had identified without error, Nicholas Mertz. Strange man, Celine thought. They seemed to have agreed that she would visit the department early in the morning, but a few hours later, Austin dialed her again around 10 o'clock at night while she was shaking in a train car and asking some stupid questions. Now his voice wasn't so appealing anymore. The policeman, on the other hand, was waiting for his guest the way something very good waits. Interrogators are always at the bottom of the law enforcement hierarchy. Austin had heard condescending remarks directed at him so often over the years that he should have gotten used to them, but not this time. Fate gave him a unique chance to prove that he was worth something too, or maybe a step higher. Suddenly, the door opened without knocking. I'm probably in a bad time. At the threshold of the office stood a woman who was still quite young and pretty. According to the instructions, everyone who comes to the office must be noted by the inspector on duty. Clarify the purpose of the visit and call the calling party. Apparently, Celine had managed to get in unnoticed. "Come in," he said to his guest. "Have a seat." "What do I owe you?" she asked. "Not only did you called twice. I'm very intrigued by you." Instead of answering, Austin pulled out his phone, on which he took several pictures of Nicholas, or whatever his name is, with his family. Zoomed in on the face of the woman with the scarf. Looked like Selena, but definitely not her. Or was this all a con man's cunning plan? Austin didn't trust anyone. "Tell me, please," the interrogator began. "Where is your husband now?" The guest's face turned crimson. She seemed angry, but she held back. Then hope flashed in her eyes. Then distrust. The silence lengthened, but Austin decided not to break it. How else would he get this lady to come clean? "I don't know," Selena exhaled. "I buried him over a year ago." But the coffin was empty. They say his car was swept out to sea by a wave. Patience ran out, and the guest began to sob. She wailed so much that Alex looked in from the next room to make sure no one needed help. Austin made a gesture with his hand. "Go away." The guest calmed down. "So you haven't seen your spouse since the day he went missing?" The police officer continued his inquiry. At that moment, Selena's anger reappeared on her face. She jumped up from her chair, ran right up to Austin, and blasted him in the face. "I knew, of course, that not the most intellectually gifted people go into the service. But this, I couldn't have imagined it. My husband is missing, along with my little girl. Your colleagues investigated the case. Wasn't it hard to ask for the files?" Austin adjusted his glasses. It was hard for him to keep a nonchalant expression on his face, but it was worth it. He was trying to figure out if it was possible to play that kind of emotion. "Probably not." "I requested it," the inquirer replied. "The case is still open." "Then why all these silly questions?" the woman shouted. "To make me suffer." At this point, the interrogator realized that the exegesis could be stopped. If she was acting, she was very talented. But most likely, Selena really didn't know anything about her husband's fate. Besides, the policeman really wanted to brag about his talents and luck. After all, how else to explain his fantastic luck? "I believe your spouse survived," the interrogator said in a nonchalant tone. "Really?" the woman asked hopefully and wiped away her tears. "But why? Why do you think so?" "Because I found it," Austin smiled and held out his phone to her. "Here, look." Selena looked at the screen and the world around her swam. It was a good thing she was sitting up, or she would have collapsed to the ground. She easily recognized Nicholas, her pet, though his appearance had changed a bit. Though his hair was new and his nose looked a little longer, it was him. The oval of his face, his eyes, his mouth, the same one who had complimented her relentlessly and swore eternal love. "It can't be," whispered Celine. "It can't be. And you don't recognize this woman?" the interrogator asked. He zoomed in on the screen in front of the stranger's face. She didn't even catch Selena's eye right away. There was a woman looking at her from the screen who reminded her of someone. Who? White hair, red-rimmed glasses. "Oh, that's... Oh my God!" Selena wondered, wiping her hair. "It's me, isn't it? I mean, she looks like me. It can't be. This lady must have kidnapped them. She's pretending to be me, playing me for a fool. We need to apprehend her now. You need to apprehend her now. I'll prove that I'm the real Selena." The interrogator coughed and adjusted his glasses. On the one hand, he wanted to laugh. On the other, he had to keep his temper in check. He had almost solved the crime that would finally get his career off the ground. It was a string of atrocities. "I have some bad news for you, Selena," Austin exhaled. Your ex-husband is not who he says he is. He's a talented con man. No, replied the visitor. It's a mistake. It's an accident. Come on, arrest this woman. Arrest her immediately. You can see she's a divorcee. Understand, I am a simple interrogator, the policeman said. Of course, I have no experience in investigating such cases, but I doubt your word very much. All indications are that Peter Mertz is the real liar here. By the way, he has a different name now. The guest began to sob again. The interrogator was surprised at her reserve of emotions. He himself could not have reacted so violently to such news. Of course, he should have drawn up a protocol of interrogation, a report, recorded the photo on disk, and sent it all to the investigation as soon as possible. Better yet, detain Peter. I don't understand anything anymore, the woman said. And by the way, I have deceived you. I have absolutely nowhere to stay in St. Petersburg. I have no apartment anymore. Here's what we'll do, Celine, Austin said after a brief thought. His plan wasn't flawless, of course, but it seemed reasonable. For the first time since Michael's disappearance, she felt interested in and attracted to a man. His proposal made Selena blush, and she thought that she could hardly hold herself back. Selena heard a drunken voice from down the long hallway. He's brought a woman, finally. Never mind, Austin said, showing her the direction. That's right, the locals. That's right. Pay no attention, beautiful stranger, shouted the drunken man. Pashka, well done, way to go. The interrogator blushed thickly. He rented a room in a relic of a bygone era. Selena looked with interest at one of the last of the St. Petersburg communal houses. High ceilings, carved windows, moldings and peeling putty, and skeins of wires running along the walls, and the musty smell of a room that needs to be renovated, but is easier to tear down. I'm still lucky, Austin smiled as they walked in. There's no mold in my room. Make yourself comfortable. Selena looked around. Finding a spare seat in this room was no easy task. There was a couch along the longest wall. Opposite it was an old closet. The rest of the room was occupied by a desk with a computer and some sort of kitchenette. Both the floor and the glass had not been cleaned for a long time. Austin blushed even more as he intercepted his guest's gaze, who was scrutinizing the dirt and grease. It's just temporary, he said. Here, I'm taking it off until they give me a work permit. How long has it been out? Selena asked out of politeness. It's been 6 years, shrugged the interrogator. How do we do it? First it's the cops, then family. What, they don't give it at all? Asked the guest. No, Austin answered and blushed again. Is it still about the apartments? She smiled. It was a weak joke, but it was something. Selena looked at the policeman because there was nothing else to look at. A good-looking man, neat and intelligent. It must be hard for him to work in the police force. Can't even get a decent apartment. I wish he had a wife. I'm sorry for the details, but I'm after the road, Selena said. I need to wash up. Come on, I'll walk you out, the policeman offered. We've got an old house here, and there's no chance of anything happening. In the communal room, there was a large kitchen block, and just behind it were showers and toilets. It was possible to wash behind a curtain with no doors or latches. She was a little embarrassed, but she still had no choice. The last time she had washed herself properly was 3 days ago at a roadside inn. I could get a room, Selena said timidly, if I'm embarrassing you. No, not at all, replied the policeman. Don't worry, I'll turn around. Besides, you can't see anything through the curtain anyway. In fact, Selena couldn't get a room. The money had been stolen, and the remaining sum wouldn't even be enough for a bed in a hostel. She couldn't even think of what to do next. She couldn't pay back the loan after she mortgaged the property. Go back to her parents. No, we need to get to the bottom of this whole story first. Is her daughter really alive? Selena turned on the water. The faucet made a sound like devils howling from the underworld. She remembered the mysterious visit to the fortune teller, after which she had decided to return to New York. Her grandmother Julianne had been right. Was it luck, coincidence, or a secret gift? The water from the faucet was barely warm, but Selena still felt pleasure. She was washing away not only the dirt, but also the past. Soon she would get her daughter back, find answers to all her questions, and live happily ever after. I wonder, Selena thought, is that man looking at me through the curtain, staring? There was no mirror here, but she realized that she looked good. Constant movement and lack of appetite had given her back her slim figure. She had naturally nice hips and neat breasts. And a pretty face too. Perhaps this flush policeman could solve one more of her problems, not just give her a place to sleep. Austin, Selena said, peeking out from behind the curtain, pass me a towel. The interrogator glanced at her, adjusted his glasses, and blushed again. She herself made her breasts appear from behind the curtain, as if by accident. Let him look around and appreciate his good fortune. Selena wiped herself all over, applied scented oil to her body, and put on fresh linen. She had to put her jeans and blouse back on, since the way to her room was across the hall. What a blessing, she said when they got back to the room. Austin, what are you doing for dinner? Well, the interrogator stretched out. I usually eat a bun with kefir, and you, if you want, you can boil your own pasta. Or buckwheat. I've got a lot of stuff to choose from, don't be shy. Selena opened the bachelor's refrigerator. Not much. Chicken eggs, melted cheese, and in the freezer there was a chicken fillet. Pasha had a multi-cooker in his room, surprisingly clean. He probably didn't use it very often. Selena finally chopped the frozen fillet, fried it, then added water and boiled the pasta right in it. When the water evaporated, she cracked a chicken egg into it and tossed in some cheese slices. It was good. It's delicious, said Austin, eating the pasta with delight. It's delicious. You see, Austin, what one woman can do. Cook a meal and warm a bed. No, I'll go to a friend's place, the interrogator said embarrassedly. I have a friend living in the next room. He has a bunk bed. And you sleep. Don't be shy. Don't be silly, Selena said. I can see that this couch folds out. I can cook more than just pasta, you know. She hugged his arm and began rubbing his muscles. The cop appeared to be a trained pleasant to hold, but Austin gently reached his hand out. Then she put her arm around his shoulders and tried to fondle him. No, he said. No, you don't. I can't do that. Am I ugly? Selena said indignantly. You don't like me. You do, Austin replied. It's just, I'm at work. Why don't you guys go to bed? I'll be right back. Embarrassed, he stalked out of his room. Yes, this was not how he had envisioned an evening in the company of this woman. But no, one must not give in to temptation, work first. In the evening, he had sent an urgent request to the insurance company and would soon receive a reply. He also requested the details of all the guests at the hotel with the poetic name. There was only one man and a girl. That's how Austin got the con man's new name. This crook would hardly wait long. Every new day was a risk for him. Walking towards the showers, Austin slammed himself on his pocket. He had forgotten his phone in the room. He thought it was no big deal, but he was wrong. Insurers are fat cats, Nicholas liked to tell his daughter Maria. If you only knew how much money they make from our fears. Fear of what? The girl asked. She was bright, of course, but not as bright as her father would have liked to think. On the fear of death, explained Nicholas. Loss, bankruptcy. But that's okay, baby. I'll pay them back for all the wrongs done to me. You'll see, they'll make a movie about me. Your daddy's a real hero. Daddy, why did you change your name? The girl asked. I told you it was a big secret, hissed the man, clearly losing patience. Please don't bring it up. Daddy's name is Nicholas, okay? His plan is on the home stretch. Now, all that's left to do is cash out. Some might say this scheme is crazy. It started with a standardized plan, insure himself and his daughter for a tidy sum. All inclusive. Accident or natural disaster, overseas or domestic maximum coverage. Then fake your own death, and your daughter's death, of course. The next thing was interesting. His wife knew nothing about his devious plan or his supposed death. What's more, she didn't even know about the insurance. All correspondence with the company after the accident was handled by Mickey's lawyer. And if the company had decided to contact the widow, everything would have fallen apart. But the con man knew that wouldn't happen. Even an experienced investigator wouldn't recognize this man as Nicholas, or Peter, for that matter. Instead of a thick head of hair, an unsightly bald spot. A ridiculous belly that's about to rip a button out of his shirt. Then there's the freckles, the blue eyes, the jutting jaw. "Could you please come to the office?" His employee politely asked him over the phone. "Oh," Mickey replied, "my client has no money at all. And my time, costs a lot of money. But we need a personal presence." The employee did not back down. "I apologize, but I sent all the documents," the lawyer said. In addition, according to Article 28, Paragraph 1, and Nicholas began to recite from memory the legal provisions according to which communication with the insurer can be conducted remotely. That the client has a right to privacy, which is why he hired a lawyer. That you should respect other people's feelings. The employee on the other end of the line sighed, but kept her line. "You see," said the girl, "it is required by the security service. Look carefully, it's written in the contract." Mickey only smiled slyly. He had foreseen this scenario a long time ago. He'd been prepared for it for a long time. "Well," the lawyer sighed, "let's do it this way. Next week, when I have a window between trials, I'll let you know. In advance, of course. But that kind of mistrust, of course, makes it impossible for me to speak favorably of your company from now on." Mickey's a highly sought-after lawyer, so it was up to the head of the benefits department to accommodate him. A very busy man, he was only able to visit the office on Wednesday, the third day after he and his daughter arrived in New York. You should see the way Mickey moves. He's got the walk of a winner, a master of life. The kind of man who can afford to look the way he wants to look. "I don't have much time," the lawyer said together with a greeting as he entered the office. "Have you done the paperwork yet?" "Yes, of course," the man replied. "You realize how much money this is, even for our company." "Ho, ho, ho," laughed Mickey. "Tell me something about the big money. I know your whole company like the back of my hand. How you like to challenge even the tiniest payout in court." "Yes, but try to get a word in edgewise with the insurer." "I'm still surprised you didn't make my client swear on the Bible," the lawyer pressed him. The man had suffered such grief. "Luckily, I did a legal review of the contract myself. There were no grounds for refusal." "It's about a client," the department head said, as soon as his guest was silent for a second. "She has to sign the documents herself. It's a security requirement. If you don't agree, go to court." There was silence. Mickey weighed the words of his interlocutor on his fingertips. "Well," said the lawyer to the head of the benefits department, "my client is depressed with grief. I don't know if she can come in person. Give me 1 minute, I'll call her." Without waiting for an answer, the lawyer went out into the corridor. From behind the door, the insurer could hear the lawyer explaining something emotionally to his interlocutor. His voice was beautiful and well-practiced, so you wouldn't want to argue. 5 minutes later, the door opened again. "I talked. It's just a formality," the insurance company representative said. "All she has to do is sign and she'll get her money. Right away." "Oh, there you go," stretched out Mickey. "I talked the client into it. Yes, it's quite possible. But I'm begging you, please be considerate. A man has lost the most precious thing in his life, his husband, and his daughter, of course. And then there's this. Yes, said the delighted insurer. Selena insists that the 100 million must be given in cash. Contact the bank and have them encash the amount in the largest denominations. But the warden was surprised. It's not a storage facility, actually. I insist, the lawyer said firmly. She wants to carry kilos of money, for God's sake. It's not your concern, and I will take the denial of this small request of an inconsolable widow as a personal insult. Let me know when you're ready, I've got to go. Mickey didn't even shake his hand, but walked toward the door with a victorious gait. Soon he would receive a tidy sum and head back to his hideout in the Czech Republic. Nicholas, alias Peter, alias Mickey, was sure that his plan was doomed to success. If only the con man could know how wrong he was. Using his powers of authority and a semi-secret assignment, Austin got the whole story. So, this Nicholas Peter wants to pull off a noble scam. He faked his own death, and to avert suspicion from himself and the death of his daughter. He took out an insurance policy so his wife wouldn't even know about it. He corresponded on behalf of the lawyer and made it look as if the inconsolable widow herself did not want to see anyone. What a hard worker, the interrogator said with delight. Yes, he deserves respect. I'm sure the scam wasn't the only one. Austin had received information about the conman's current data even earlier. As is customary for foreigners, they were sent to the local police department, and they're carefully placed in the database where they could be accessed by any employee if necessary. Austin was faced with a difficult choice. On the one hand, he had to inform his boss that a trivial 3-letter agency assignment had solved a serious crime. On the other hand, he could take all the credit for the tracker to someone else. No, that's not what he'll do. Like a hunter, he would rush fearlessly at his prey and throw it at the colonel's feet. You should be lucky, the interrogator said to the invisible interlocutor. After that sleepover, she never asked him for help again. Luck likes preparation, and I've been preparing for it for 10 years, no less. So he now knew the exact day and hour when the crook's accomplice would come for the money. Friday, 4:00 p.m., give or take. The interrogator decided to rent a car share for the day to go out. He didn't have his own car, of course. Park across the street at 2:00. And wait. To ambush him, Austin took a day off work. His boss looked at him with round eyes, but the interrogator was adamant. I apologize, Austin said, adjusting his glasses. But I've got a month's worth of time off. I'm only asking for 1 day. And what is it that you want to do so badly? For the first time in the years of their acquaintance, a slight smile ran across his face. Is it really a woman? You guessed it, said the interrogator. She came here, a woman from out of town. She asks me to take her to the historical center, to take her to the bridge. Well, you get the picture. All right, said the boss, but just 1 day, and to come to work as usual at 7:40. Is that clear? That's right, Austin replied. When he got to his room in the communal apartment, he couldn't calm down for a long time. He replayed the smallest details of his operation in his head, how he would take down the crook. From the back, of course, how he put the bracelets on him, load him into a car share car. Of course, police regulations required at least 2 officers to both apprehend and escort criminals. But sometimes instructions could be ignored. Austin also longed for Selena. Why didn't I give her what she wanted yesterday? He thought, I'd basically wanted the same thing. However, as soon as he apprehends the crook and solves the most complicated crime alone, he is sure to get a promotion, and with it a raise in salary, a nice apartment and women. It is only necessary to be a little patient. With these thoughts, the policeman fell asleep and woke up only by the alarm clock. The interrogator could not wait. He immediately rented a car, not some budget Volkswagen Polo, but a luxury red Ford Mustang. It didn't have car share stickers on it, so it would attract a little less attention. Plus, this car had no rear doors, so the twisted criminal wouldn't be able to get away with it. Although the interrogator had originally planned to set up an ambush at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, he decided not to delay. Already at 10 o'clock in the morning, his Ford was parked across the street from the office of the insurance company. He decided not to eat at all, but to drink water in small sips, so that his physiological needs would not become an obstacle to his triumph. Austin sat in the car and waited. It turns out that ambushes are very tiring. There were dozens and hundreds of people walking past him. It wasn't the busiest place, but New York was never empty. He watched them, trying to memorize details. The seat in the car was very comfortable, and even after 2 hours from the beginning of the ambush, neither his back nor his legs hurt. From time to time, the policeman started the engine and turned on the massage mode. Yeah, he thought, if I were to sit in an ambush, it would be in a vehicle like this. It's a dream. Well, soon he'll be able to afford a nice car too. Maybe he'll even have a driver in his new position. Not a personal driver, of course, but that's okay. So he could dial him and say, "Jack, 5 minutes." He was snapped out of his pleasant thoughts by a strange picture. No way. Austin, an interrogator with 8 years' experience, couldn't believe his eyes. Into the office of the insurance company walked Selena. She was looking around restlessly, and she also wore glasses. But having seen the face once, he would never forget this woman. It's only 1 o'clock in the afternoon. What was she doing in the office? Austin got out of the car, ran across the road, and lurked at the side. He pretended to watch his smartphone, but he hadn't even unlocked the screen. It had been quite a while, 30 or 40 minutes, when a woman came out of the office. She was holding 2 large bags in her hands, and judging by the change in her gait, it was hard for her to walk. The interrogator followed her. There can be no doubt she took the money herself. How did he miss the widow? The triumph of her apprehension could hardly compare with the capture of the ringleader. The husband must have risen from the dead and persuaded his wife to help him. Well, we must act. The interrogator quickened his pace. "Selena," Austin said as he approached his ward. "Svetochka, where are you going?" The woman set down her bags and turned around. There was no worry, fear, or doubt on her face. Just a huge smile from ear to ear. Suddenly, Selena raised her hand so sharply that Austin didn't even have time to blink an eye, and the light went out for the inquirer. Selena now felt deceived twice. First, it turned out that her hubby wasn't dead, and then the interrogator, who looked like an ordinary nerd, was squeamish about her gorgeous body. She's still full of life. So Selena decided she had to do something on her own. Finding Peter was easy. All the information she needed was in the inquirer's cell phone. When he denied her sex and retreated, he'd forgotten it. Plus, his screen lock is a simple zipper. That's the first thing that popped into her head. In a separate file that was in the open apps, she found a notepad where her and her husband's details were written. Even the name of the hotel and the room. Getting past the desk clerk proved to be an easy task. She just walked forward toward the stairs and no one called out to her. It must not be customary to ask guests questions. When she got to the 3rd floor, she was lucky again. Walking down the hallway was her husband. She ran up to him and slapped him in the face. Peter stood there like a thunderstruck man. It wasn't her who saw the dead man, it was him. He rubbed his cheek and remained silent. He hadn't changed a bit. He was still handsome. How could she not have noticed that wormhole in him? How could she have come up with such a plan? And all for what? For money? Well, Selena said, looking at her husband, "That's how you are with me. I've already buried you, and you're safe and sound." The man was confused. His eyes ran left and right down the corridor. "Let's move away," he said, and pulled her to the side. But the woman pulled away and pushed him away. "No." Selena was indignant. "I have to see her. To see my daughter. The one you took from me." "Svetochka," He said in a languid voice, "It's a very long, scary and fantastic story. I don't even know how to convince you to believe me. I'm guilty, yes guilty, but not in the way you might think." "I'm in no hurry," the woman replied. "Come on, tell me your fantastic story, before I call the police to put you in jail." "How did you find me?" he asked. Peter, aka Nicholas, aka Mickey, couldn't understand what he'd done wrong. He knew that his ex-girlfriend had left Peter. He was convinced that they would never cross paths in this huge city. And Selena kept silent. She didn't want to tell him about the interrogator. "The insurance company called me," she blurted out. Peter's face twisted in a grimace of rage and fear. He turned pale and his lips turned blue. What did you tell them?" he asked in a whisper. "Nothing," the woman shrugged. "Said I'd be sure to get the money. I don't need it, you know." "Thank God," he exhaled. "You sure you didn't say anything?" "No," Selena replied, and decided to change the unpleasant subject. "So that's all you care about? What about my feelings?" Peter smiled. His face brightened, his lips red again, and his eyes. It seemed to her that they were filled with love again. He took her elbow in a gentle gesture. She couldn't find the strength to push him away. She wanted to burst into tears, but the woman pulled herself together. "Let's go outside," he asked. "Let's go for a walk, have some coffee." "No," Selena cut Selena off. "I have to go inside right now, to look at her." "Maria is asleep," Peter said. "Please listen to me. Did you know that I was thinking about you? For example, you sold the apartment. So you followed me." The woman was surprised. "Not sold, but mortgaged." "It doesn't matter," my husband said. "I mean, I was going to come out to you myself. In just a few days." When they went outside, they were immediately blown away by the cold St. Petersburg wind. It's no different here. They crossed the road and sat down in one of the coffee shops. "I don't understand one thing," Selena said. "What kind of husband are you to me, ex-husband or not? I'm officially a widow, by your grace." "Don't scold me," Peter asked. "You'll find out now." A little sooner than I expected, but... And he did tell her a story. As fantastic as Julienne's grandmother's story, but as Selena listened to her husband, she believed him more and more, and by the end of the story she doubted everything but Peter's honesty. Gradually, her eyes returned to normal. Some kind-hearted people brought him to the toilet of the cafe, where the interrogator washed his face for a long time. The pain was unbearable, but the cause was not a chemical burn. No, with Selena, his career rushed past him, and she'd blasted him in the face like a wild animal. But the problems didn't end there. Pulling out his cell phone, Austin saw a dozen missed calls. He couldn't hear the calls because he had set his smartphone to silent mode. They were dialed by the same person who signed his name simply as Chief. Had someone reported to the police that an unknown woman had sprayed tear gas in a police officer's face? "Hello," said the interrogator, trying to put a relaxed tone to his voice. "What's up, slacker?" roared the chief. "Have you had enough of your women?" "Not yet," replied Austin. "What happened? What's wrong?" The warden shrieked. "He's still asking." "To the department. To the department, quickly." The interrogator had no way of knowing where he was. He even had to turn on the navigator to figure it out. Yeah, right next to the insurance office. Someone must have seen it when that woman sprayed gas in his face and helped him to the bathroom. His eyes were still watering, so Austin didn't want to drive the rental car. He called a cab. The interrogator walked into the department looking like he was going to the scaffold. "What do I do?" "Deny it. He'll never admit he was trying to catch a con man. There's no report, no paperwork. It's all in his head. He'll write a detailed report that he decided to follow a suspicious woman and she sprayed him in the face." "Hello," Austin said innocently, walking into the supervisor's office. "You wanted to see me?" Surprisingly, the colonel was sitting modestly in his chair, and on the chair of the head sat some red-haired man, and not just sitting, but throwing his feet on the table, unheard of impertinence. "Showed up," said the warden. "Hero lover, you've had enough, haven't you? Look who's here for you." Austin looked at the red-haired man. He didn't look like a very nice man. A crumpled sweater, a shabby jacket, boots with huge soles. But since he not only took the chair of the chief, but also threw his feet on the table, the man is not easy. It was evident from the prickly eyes. "Hello," the little man said, removing his feet. "Hello," replied the interrogator. "With whom do I have that honor?" "It's Fox," said the warden, and turned off your pontoon cutter. "A fox?" Austin was surprised. It looked human. "That's my call sign," the man explained. "Does Fox have a name?" The interrogator insisted. "Names are not allowed for operatives," said the guest, standing up. "Oh, you screwed up, Captain. You screwed up." The colonel took out a handkerchief and began to wipe his face restlessly. Sweat was dripping from his forehead. So not only did they know about his shame, Austin must have violated something that made the three-letter office come to the house in person, and all alone. "I don't know what you're talking about," the interrogator shrugged. "I got the day off today. I'll do whatever I want." "Shut up," shouted the colonel. "Are you playing games here? You and I are no longer in the same boat. I've said it all. I've said it all. That this is amateur hour from start to finish. You're no longer with us, Austin." "Am I fired?" Austin asked. He felt sick to his stomach. "Fired." Fox mocked him and strode toward the door. He grabbed the handle. "Did you think you'd get off that easy? Follow me quickly." I'm not going," the inquirer said. "I'm not going anywhere." "Go on, take care of yourself," the operative replied. "Yes, go." The chief put an end to his ambitions. "Go yourself, or I'll tell our people and they'll bring you out in bracelets. To be honest, I would have thrown you in the monkey house." It was only now that Austin realized the gravity of what was happening. It seems he's not just fired anymore. Would the policeman of yesterday now become a prisoner? Austin felt scared and sweaty. Selena took the interrogator down with ease. Her hand was being pulled by the gigantic sum of $1 million. Yeah, Peter's plan was good. How clever of him to set her up to suffer, grief-stricken, and so that no one would ever think that her emotions might not be real. What a scoundrel, thought Selena. I almost lost my mind. And still what a man. He rented her an apartment 2 blocks from the insurance office, and she had already met Maria. The girl said some strange things to her. She even looked at her with suspicion. Well, that's okay. The baby will get used to it. It's good that they're together again. Now she has money. And put it in the bank? I don't think you can carry that kind of money on board. It went like clockwork. Selena blurted out as she entered the apartment. Did you take it? Her husband asked seriously. Selena wanted to hug and caress him, but he gently pushed her away and took the bag of money in his hand. He weighed it, figuring out how much cash there was. How did you get there? Peter said. That's a heavy burden. Yeah, Selena replied. I'm exhausted. I thought I'd be right back. And there we be. What about the policeman? My husband asked. How did you get around him? Just like you said, the woman grinned. Pepper spray in the eyes. When he went for his face, I sprayed some more. And then some more. He's probably still waking up. Look, I'm such a criminal. Why don't we make this quick, honey? Yes, it's a serious article, Peter said thoughtfully, ignoring her words. He continued to admire the stacks of $5,000 bills. Assault on a police officer. Yes, with bodily harm. That's, real time. I've been waiting for you, Selena said. I'd had a lot of people asking for me, I knew you were alive. I took care of myself, But Peter's attention was consumed with money. He couldn't believe his scam had gone so easily. What remained was not the hardest part, but the time-consuming part, getting it all out of the country. He already had a plan, This time, he'd have to be honest. His search company would buy nearly $100 million worth of luxury goods from the US, smuggle it out to Europe. "Why aren't you talking, my love?" Selena asked. "I'm talking to you." "I'm sorry, I got distracted," Peter smiled. "I wanted to tell you what a great job you did. You did great, just like we discussed." "I've been trying to talk you into it for half an hour," said the woman. "I haven't had sex in over a year, and you're not even listening to me." "Oh, I'm sorry," my husband replied, and something in his face changed. "Take a shower, sweetie. I'll get everything ready. Let's not rush into anything." Selena glared. Of course, he might not be so capricious and take her as is, but a shower wouldn't hurt. She wanted to wash away the horror of the past months. Burying her own husband and daughter, she was on the verge of despair. Peter had rented a nice apartment. The bathroom was state-of-the-art. She opened the shower door and pressed the massage mode, and small streams of water immediately rushed into her from all sides. It felt good. Selena remembered washing herself in the communal room a couple days ago and hitting on that policeman. Oh my God, it was disgusting to think about. Was she about to fall into Peter's arms? She rubbed the shampoo on her body and imagined with pleasure how he would caress her. What a man! He'd arranged everything so well. Meanwhile, Peter counted the stacks of money and made sure every dollar was there. Well, he was lucky to have Selena. She was the most honest and decent woman he'd ever met. He'd liked it at first, but then he'd gotten annoyed. A man can't be that good 24/7. At first, he thought of just leaving. Sooner or later, the police would have her in custody. What do they have on him? Nicholas Crass has impeccable credentials. There will be a real diplomatic scandal if he's detained. What's more, he's dead to everyone but this interrogator. But as far as Peter understood from his wife, this policeman was running the operation alone, without informing anyone. When he realizes he's been duped, he'll just throw the ends in the water. Selena struggled to get out of her thoughts and into the shower room. Not only was she clean now, but she smelled so exciting. Peter couldn't help himself. He knocked politely on the door. Oh, how gallant. Still the same. "Come in," she called in a languid voice. "Come in, my love," and rubbed my back. Peter took a step inside. He smiled and hid one hand behind his back. There must be a present in there. He stepped closer and held out a towel to her. Selena tossed it aside and showed her body in all its glory. She stroked her sides and hips erotically and tried to make a seductive movement. "See how lucky you are to have a baby girl," she said playfully. "Yes," he replied, "very lucky." "I don't know how you're holding back," Selena said. "That's a lot of willpower. I thought you were going to grab me right away and carry me to our bed." "Patience," the man said. "Patience, dear." "What are you hiding behind your back?" the woman asked. Very interesting. There was silence. Her husband looked at her without taking his eyes off her. She had seen that look before. At times like this, Selena usually shook his hand and asked him, "What are you thinking about?" He never answered. Now the pause lingered. "Goodbye, my love," Peter said and removed his hand from behind his back. Selene's eyes widened with surprise and fear. She suddenly felt cold standing naked in front of the traitor. Fox drove like a real hooligan. He was driving an old Mercedes, which seemed to have a very powerful engine under the hood. The operative maneuvered through the rows, accelerated and braked sharply. He also kept looking at Austin and repeating, "You're in trouble, Captain. Oh, you're in trouble. You're a captain." The interrogator decided not to answer. The fear had passed, and now he had both the will and the desire to act. They wouldn't charge him with anything. After all, he hadn't violated anything. Getting fired was probably the worst thing that could happen, unless something terrible happened. "It's with me," Fox said as they entered a building with huge columns. The main office of the three-letter agency that everyone doesn't like to memorialize. The guard nodded and pressed a button, and the turnstile in front of Pavel turned green. "Go," the operative ordered. "Well, walk. Over there." He pointed to a dark corridor that ended in a metal door. Fox swiped his card, and the lock opened. Austin moved on. To both left and right were doors beyond number. As they walked down the corridor, the interrogator saw an interrogation room, just like in American movies. "What interested?" smiled the operative. "Do you know him?" "First time I've ever seen it," lied the interrogator. "Well, talk, talk," Fox sneered. Behind the glass was Nicholas, aka Peter, aka Mickey, aka God knows who else. So the con man had been apprehended after all. The coroner was relieved. There were two men sitting in front of the con man, questioning him. Fox swiped his card, pressed a button, and could hear what was being said behind the glass. "Attempted murder," one of the investigators stretched out. "Okay, he'd be running his scams like he always does. But no, he's getting wet. You're gonna be in jail for a long time if you don't cooperate with us." "Murder?" Nicholas asked with a slight accent and a smile. "Do you think it's possible to kill with a stun gun?" "Yes, if you hit a wet body in the heart," blurted out the investigator. "You're such a bastard. It's good that this woman has a great health. She'll live." "I don't know what this is about," Nicholas yawned. "Wake me up when my lawyer gets here." The Fox pressed the button again, and the room fell silent. He moved on, and Austin had no choice but to follow. They reached the end of the hallway. There was a video intercom in front of the door. The operative pressed the button, and it was as if his face had changed to a more welcoming one. "I brought you, Comrade Colonel." There was a beep, and the door opened. They went inside, walked past the reception area, where a pretty girl was sitting, only in a shirt with epaulettes. In the office sat a man with graying temples, curious eyes, and looked at his guest with interest. "Well," said the colonel, "the interrogator everyone's talking about. Have a seat, don't be shy. You almost ruined our operation. This is a major project, by the way." "Me?" the policeman interjected, picking out a chair. Talking to this big man was not like the execution he had so much dreaded. "I only wanted to apprehend a crook." "Imagine, so did we," said the big boss. "It turns out they wanted the same thing." "How did we step on each other's tails?" wondered Austin. "Agents don't sleep," the operative replied haughtily. "What, you thought you could outplay us, huh? We've had everything captured and intercepted for a long time." The colonel looked at his subordinate with disdain. He didn't seem to like the fact that he was speaking to the guest in such a tone. "Tell you what, Fox," said the warden. "Go on out the door. Go do your business, and we'll have a little chat." "Me?" the cop was surprised. "What's that?" "Get out," shouted the colonel, instantly losing patience. "Come on, argue with me, rookie. Leave us two alone, quick." Humiliated, Fox left the office. He looked at the policeman one last time with eyes full of hatred. The colonel rose from his leather chair and approached Austin, looked carefully into his eyes. The interrogator was embarrassed, took off his glasses, and began to wipe the glasses. "Brilliant work," he praised with a smile. "I mean it now, without irony. To solve such a crime in just 3 days." "It was an accident," said the inquirer. "Besides, I missed it. I understand Selena almost died because of me." "You missed it because you had neither the forces nor the means," the colonel said seriously. "Remember, every operation requires cover and support. One is not a warrior in the field. Is that clear to you?" "Yeah." "Can I ask you a question?" Austin said. "How did you find this Peter Nicholas? Where did he go wrong?" "Still on women," the colonel grinned. "Our swindler began his affair with a certain Barbara, a hotel porter. Initially, he'd offered to play the role of ex-wife to her. And then the real Mrs. Selene got involved. That's your fault, Comrade Captain. Such a valuable witness should be led to the end." "Sorta, I understand," nodded the colonel. There weren't enough forces and resources. That's why you should have taken the matter upstairs instead of playing the hero. So when Barbara saw her man with her ex, that's when her patience ran out. And we have a special relationship with hotels. You know, things happen in hotels. They owe us 1,000 times over. I couldn't believe it when I saw the picture. Mertz, my ass. So we played this blitz. And to me, is there a complaint against me? The inquirer asked. No, replied the warden. It was I who asked Fox to deliver you. And he probably got scared. Maybe even showed his badge. Don't pay any attention to him. He's a competent officer, but he's not very discerning when it comes to achieving his goals. Sometimes I chose his call sign, by the way. What about Selena? The inquirer asked. Did that scoundrel really want to kill her? Imagine that, the colonel said seriously. He's very, very clever. A stun gun, you know, is not much of a weapon. Unreliable and cumbersome, but it can be used to kill. Of course, it would still have to be proved. Let the investigation work. Well then, Austin said, getting up from his chair. It was nice to meet you, of course, and to get off scot-free. But it's time for me to get back into my routine. Especially since I'm not getting fired and nothing terrible has happened. What, you want to look for a criminal trail in trivial deaths again? Smiled the colonel. I have a better idea, as they say. I have a vacancy in the department. Of course, we won't take it right away. You have to retrain, take exams. It's nothing personal, Captain, but after 8 years in the line, some people even forget the American alphabet. The interrogator glowed. This was the chance that comes once in 10 years. Soti was right, and the case was indeed a winnable one. Austin adjusted his spectacles, straightened up. But don't think that we have a resort here, the colonel continued. People here don't see their wives for weeks at a time. There's plenty of work. Salary. Well, better than yours, of course. But not a gold mine. You'd better think about it before you take it. If I submit my documents tomorrow, will it be okay? Said the former interrogator. Maybe you could give me the phone number of the head of the personnel department right away, so that I don't have to bother you unnecessarily. The colonel smiled and shook Austin's hand. Well, as they say here, welcome to the force, son. By the way, what do you think of the call sign Cupid? You look a little like him, don't you think?